There we go. Finally figured out how to get this thing going. So, welcome to my stream. Hope to speak with people, atheists or Christians, about your beliefs, why you believe them, the impacts it has on your lives, how you left religion, or how you got involved in religion. I used a thumbnail. Imagine there's no heaven or hell. Of course, from the great John Lennon song, Imagine. John Lennon's one of my favorite artists, great, brilliant songwriter from the Beatles, of course. And that song is amazing. All right. I know that for people who believe in heaven and hell, it's a very weird idea to be at a point where you are not believing in those things. Right? It's a strange place to be. But once you understand that there is no heaven and hell, you can then let your mind become clear and to not have a fear of hell and to be content with reality as it is. You don't need to have a false hope. You don't have to pretend things anymore. So it becomes a lot easier. Right, so join me here. And anyone who's out there, let's chat. I left a link in the stream. I'll do it again. Let's see. All right. Here's my link. And I'm out here in Florida. Sunny Florida is where I live. It's a nice late afternoon going into evening on my front porch. It's one really cool thing about YouTube is that you can kind of do it wherever. I don't have any studios. I don't have any special microphones. All I have is a laptop. But here I am, live on YouTube. So let's see. What have I been thinking about? Well, one thing that I saw that was really annoying was these wildfires in California. Right? We have a horrible disaster, right, created by wind and dry land that went into flames and it spreads like crazy, and we see people losing their homes. And there are some Christians out there that are actually saying that this was the judgment of God, that God was upset with the people out in California. I personally think that is extremely insulting. I think it's unbelievably negative on the part of these people, and it's despicable to think that that God would punish these people. Okay, hold on a second.
Oh, she's on the back.
All right, back. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Not having a studio and having stuff going on at the house is not easy. Anyone who wants to come into my room and my madness, be my guest as my dogs bark behind me. Right. Got two hot dogs, dachshunds. But come on in. All right. The wildfires for Christians, and I know it's not all Christians, but for Christians to say that is judgment by God, it just strikes me as horrible. What kind of human being would think that God wants to destroy these people? Why? Why would he want to destroy these people? I mean, really? I mean, that's what we've become. I mean, God wants to destroy people. I mean, it's terrible. Mm. Flute whistle. We're getting our notes. Notes for what? We will come up professionally. That's nice. You're training to be a street preacher? That's interesting. I like that. Right. I did a little bit of that myself quite a long time ago, but I did a little bit of street preaching, believe it or not. And it's pretty interesting thing to do. So I'd love to talk to you about that. Street preaching is something that very few people do. It's a bold thing to do. You need some courage to do that too, because you're dealing with people that don't really want to hear what you have to say. And sometimes it can get pretty confrontational. So, but yeah, come on in my chat if you can, so we can talk about street preaching. I can tell you what I used to do, and you could tell me what you plan on doing, where you plan on doing it. Are you targeting people, specific groups of people, or is it literally just picking a corner and going there with a sign and maybe a megaphone? I used to have a sign. One time I used a megaphone. Wasn't something I did all the time. I would probably say I only did it 4 times back when I was a Christian, but I was moved to do it. 10 minutes. Cool. That's awesome. Right? I have a worker trying to check my back porch. And my back porch still has a leak, and he's over there looking at that. Right on. What else have I been thinking about recently? All right, one of my biggest concerns that I've thought about recently is this movement in America, and I know it's not all Christians because Christianity is so diverse, and I get that. But there's a movement in America, I guess, falls under the label of Christian nationalism. A lot of these types of Christians think that America needs to go back to its Christian roots, that it needs to be more Christian, putting Christianity in schools, government promoting Christianity actively. And in my opinion, that is completely un-American. All right. I believe that the country was established with a clear separation of church and state. And that is something that really gets me going. It's one of the reasons I'm even on YouTube. See, I came on YouTube because of the Trump victory. Okay. I couldn't really believe that a man who's a convicted felon, who's defrauded people out of millions and millions of dollars, was found liable for sexual abuse of women, who paid hush money to women who he was with, prostitutes, porn stars. All right. I can't believe that American people voted him into office. It just astonished me. I never thought I would see the day that a known criminal would be president of the United States. Then, when I started thinking about the fact that evangelical Christianity is a big reason why he was elected, and I'm like, wow. I mean, these Christian radicals are winning. I mean, they are winning this war. If there's a culture war, they're kind of winning it now, and that really is something that perturbed me enough to want to get on YouTube and to start giving my voice and letting people know that you can be different, you can be non-Christian, all right, still be happy and still be American, okay? And I support any Christian's freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to worship wherever they want, freedom of any religion. All right? I support all that. All right. But I don't support it being a part of uh, government or in the public school system or to be lording over the rest of us Americans. That to me is completely un-American, and it's something I would, always voice my opinion about. Right? I don't think I can do anything in any big way because American people wanted a dictator type authority, in Trump, but at least I can be a voice. All right, at least I can express myself, and that's why I decided to become more active on YouTube, this year in 2025. All right, so I had to give you some background of why I'm even doing this stuff. Right? I think it's important enough that secular thinkers need to be heard now more than ever. Okay, it's kind of like as a Christian, uh, having a country that does not allow you to express yourself, does not want you to be a part of this country. That would be pretty bad. That's kind of what it would be like for us atheists and secular thinking people to have Christians lord over us and to dominate us and tell us what we can and cannot do. All right. I don't think society should be ruled by religion. I don't want a theocracy in America. That's the last thing I would want. Okay. I've actually considered moving out of America after Donald Trump won. All right. I don't know how his presidency is going to go, but I'm going to see. And if it's bad, like it may be, I may end up leaving the country. Right, the country I was born in, the country I love, the country I would fight for. But it's getting to a point where if he's going to be uh, a ruler in chief and not an actual servant of the public, and if he's going to fleece the United States for money, right, and incorporate all kinds of things that may take people's rights away, it's going to be hard for me to live here anymore. So I might look for somewhere else to go. Right. But that remains to be seen. It's very difficult to think of yourself leaving the only country you ever known. Right. It'd be very hard, but I would start considering that. I have thought about it. And depending on how the Trump presidency goes, I mean, may possibly happen. I may leave my country. I hope not, but I'm leaving the door open. The street preaching thing is fascinating to me in this way. Most of the time when I hear street preachers, they're kind of just telling people that they're very bad, that they're going to hell, and that sort of thing, and then offering them a solution. Jesus is the answer. You're going to go to hell, but Jesus is the answer. Right? And it's like, I don't know what's more arrogant. I mean, to be out there telling people they're going to hell is a pretty arrogant thing to do. It's one of the reasons most people won't do street preaching, even when they're Christian. Right? But I thought when I was a Christian that I was doing a good thing. I'm out there trying to save souls, save people from the hell that they're going to get, right? If they continue on without belief in the God, without belief in the Christ, right? And now looking back on it, I'm like, what was I thinking? I mean, who am I to tell people what they need to believe? Why they need to believe what I believe? And I used to encounter people who would get upset. you know, people who would say, "Why are you telling me that I'm going to hell? You don't even know me," right? But somehow I thought that was a good idea. I thought that was a smart thing to do. Well, times have changed in my world because that's the last thing I would want to be doing. Right? Telling people they're going to hell because they don't think like I do. Right? That's pretty much the last thing I would want to be doing. But times change, people change, and things you do when you're younger, sometimes you look back on and say, just what was I thinking? What got into me to decide to go on the street and tell people what they need to believe? Just because I believed it, just because I thought that it was very important. All right. And of course, you're received differently. Some people give you a beep, thumbs up. You're doing the work of God. Some people are angry, so it's a mixture, and it's quite confrontational. And you get those backers like you're a fighter for God, and they're like, this is great. The guy's fighting for God. All right. And they'll support you. And then you get the people who kind of despise you. Okay. They kind of hate what you're doing. Right. And I get it because it depends where you're coming from. But it's definitely confrontational, that's for sure. And I don't mind it being done. In fact, I support the freedom of people to be on the streets saying whatever they want to say. If it's about Jesus, good, as long as it's on public property and it's not disturbing the peace. Then of course, all right, if they want to preach Trumpism on the street, I'm all for it. I'd fight for your right to express yourselves freely in this country, right? But doesn't mean I agree with you. Okay, but I definitely agree you have the right to do these things, and you shouldn't be confronted with any violence or anything like that, because that's always wrong to me. If you can't win in the court of free speech where people can have dialogue, there's no reason to be violent ever in that sort of thing. Political violence is just awful. It's awful when either side does it. When someone tries to assassinate the president, it's awful. No matter what, it's never right. Luigi Mangione going out and having a grudge against, you know, insurance companies in America, and taking it upon himself to, you know, assassinate a CEO. You'll never hear me supporting that, ever. I never support such a thing. All right. But in this strange country we live in, it's kind of like you got to be careful nowadays. You don't know what people are capable of doing. And that guy never thought he would go on and you know, walk down the street and get shot. I never thought that, but in this crazy country nowadays, anything is possible. And I see a flute whistle. Let me see if I can bring you in if you're there. Let's see. Add to stage. All right, are you there?
How you going?
Hey, flute whistle, how are you?
Oh, good, thanks, mate. Yeah, good to come on. Thanks for that.
Hey, I like open dialogue.
Awesome.
So you're gonna be a street preacher the first time, or you've done it before?
No, I haven't done it before, so I'm training for
What accent?
for that day.
I hear you have an accent. Where's that from?
Australia.
Oh, you live in Australia?
Yeah.
Cool. I've heard it's a beautiful country. I was just talking to my girlfriend a week ago about possibly going to Australia because we were talking about places we might want to visit. And that's a place I may want to visit because I hear it's a wonderful country.
I think it's up there as being a really good one. The only problem with that is it's so big. You're only gonna, I mean, it's a big trip if you're gonna see sort of all a decent amount of places.
Yeah, you know where I wanted to go, and it's only because I follow two music groups that are out of Adelaide. And,
Okay.
I've been wanting to see them, and I'm like, wow, that would be awesome to go to Australia and go. I understand that Adelaide has a big music scene, and I'm really into music. I love music, and the two groups, they're big on YouTube. Is Hindley's Street Club, HSCC, and the other one is Sing It Live. And I follow them on YouTube for years. And awesome musicians, awesome bands. And I think I'd like to go check them out one day.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't been there. But it looks good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a big music scene. That's what I gather. That there's a lot of music there. Shows.
Yeah.
So, are there a lot of street preachers over there?
No. No. I've seen maybe a couple in my life. That's about it. I've never really come across one. I think
what
there's
makes
one.
you want to do it? Like what's driving you?
What's driving me would be it's not much different. Like it's just one more step up, and it's the funnest.
Well, Australia,
is
it primarily a Christian country or no? Because I don't know like the religion in Australia.
Yeah, I'd say it's moderate. It's up there, but definitely not one of the bigger countries.
Because America is primarily, I would say, Christian oriented, but it certainly is a melting pot of all different cultures. But Christianity is probably the number one religion or belief system that I encounter.
Yeah. Yeah, I reckon. Well, it looks like America's the mecca for the actual street preacher.
Yes, Yeah,
the
it is.
actual the banner. Of course, you got to have a banner. You know,
Yeah, I've seen street
for
preachers.
that version.
Yeah, it's street preachers in America. You see them a lot. I mean, I do anyway. I always, they make themselves noticeable, so can't help but see them.
Do they annoy you?
Nah, no, I don't annoy me.
Yeah.
I appreciate street preachers in a way because, like I said, not that I believe what they're saying is true, but I appreciate their zeal. I appreciate their conviction. All right,
Mm.
and freedom of speech is what it's about to me. So, I don't have to agree with someone to think that they should be free to express their beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm not coming up to do to practice so much, but it's good. It's good to talk to people about it. So you done it before? Was it how dangerous was it?
Um, I wouldn't
Because
say. I mean, I didn't think it was dangerous, like my life was in danger. All right, but it was confrontational, so you would get a lot of feedback. Um,
yes,
I would get encouragement from. I used to be a Christian, so this was back in the day. Not now, but many years ago.
right,
So go on the streets. Uh, did it with a couple of friends one time, and holding signs in a town square, and just preaching, the gospel, and have some people who were very, very on board with it. That would encourage us, say how wonderful it was that we were doing what we were doing. But there's also people who don't like you because they don't like what you're saying,
right,
and they could make that known too. All right. Like I said, I
right.
didn't ever felt like I was physically in danger, but definitely would encounter people who had a totally different understanding.
Yep. Yep. I'd say a lot of the churches are pretty dead over here, as far as that zeal. Like it's nothing, but they're there. The churches are still there.
How is it? You familiar with Hillsong?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I went to one Hillsong event.
I mean, I loosely followed. There was a lot of scandal and all that. Right. I didn't really follow it that closely, but it certainly didn't look like a good thing that ended up happening.
Right, they done something, didn't they? Yeah, probably pedophiles or something.
Well, yeah, there was like a history from way back when the founder uh, was involved in something scandalous with, I think it might have been underage girls, but it was kind of covered up, which
Right.
is kind of, that happens in America a lot too. There's things that happen where the churches try to cover it up because they don't want their reputation to be tainted.
Yep.
Which I'm against that.
Yeah, same. Yep. Yep.
If you're gonna be Christian, I kind of would like to see you live out a Christ-like life.
Yep. That's the thing. I've been studying a lot on the preachers, like watching the preachers, what they say, on YouTube. So I've been watching how they're doing it more so, and I've got some good notes. But the ones you come across, they know their stuff though. Like they also know the Bible through in and throughout, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to be really a Bible scholar to be a preacher or a pastor. You know, I mean, most of the pastors in America are definitely not Bible scholars. They go to a school where they'll learn basic Bible, but there's no prerequisite that you have to be like an expert on the Bible.
Yeah. Well, some of them are pretty bad too.
Well, yeah, I
Some
don't
of
know
them
how
are
it is.
terrible.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm
how it
talking
is in
very few. But
Australia, but in America, there's all different schools you could go to, and they
yeah.
teach different types of doctrine and theology. So, a person coming out of a particular theological school may think differently than another one coming out of a different one, about Christian issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, anything you want to ask me, feel free to. All right. Uh, anything.
Yeah, I'd start off as a banner holder for sure. I go straight in on the banner / security.
Yeah, and then you'll invite people in. They're going to engage with you,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the banner is going to draw attention.
The banner
Right?
is, yeah. So I yeah. Oh, you'd have to memorize some things too, for sure. Wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to
that's
pulling out
difficult
notes.
too.
Yeah, I think I'd need my notes on me, in front of me. I think for the first while,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I find it really difficult. Like even on this live stream, and I'm new to this, but I come on, and before you came on, I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Because I don't prepare anything. It's not like I'm sitting here. I don't look at myself as doing a show. It's just like something I'm just doing.
right, yes,
And then I
yeah,
kind of feel like, what am I going to
yeah,
talk about?
yes, okay,
I much
yeah,
I much prefer having someone to talk to and with.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think like a lot of people, in the chats and that, that's what I do too. But it's like one step up. I might as well get the banner and really put that up, you know.
Are you part of a particular church like that you would get support from in doing this?
I have one, but I'm keeping it separate. I have one, but it's so I go to church. I got my church that I go to on Sunday, but this one would be at a different one that goes and does it. Goes and does the street preaching.
Is it a denomination as we have in America? Like,
Yeah. So I'd have the Baptist. The Baptist is the one I go to, and the other one's a Baptist too, but that one does street preaching.
yeah.
So
Did you ever go to New Zealand?
no, I haven't been there.
I've
But
never been there either. I just knew someone that came from New Zealand. I spoke with them a lot about that country. So I learned a little bit about it. It's
yeah,
very close to Australia, and the accent is very similar.
yeah, pretty used to like knowing New Zealand people too over here, and it's pretty normal. Like it's no shock or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So how long have you been a Christian?
I'd say 5 years.
Did you have a radical conversion or a slow conversion?
Slow. Yeah, definitely slow. Definitely slow. Few pop-ups, but pretty much slow. On and off the first sort of 2 or 3 years, kind of a little bit. Yeah, I'll go. But you know, then there's a sort of more of a second one where it's like, yeah, all right, we're doing this. You know.
Are you committed for life? You think you're in forever? At least until you pass away?
I think there's always that. There's always that. You know what I mean? There's always that. There's always that chance around the place, like, you know. But yeah, there's always a chance of leaving. It's always, yeah. There's always, you know. It's never. I don't look at it like it was some sort of life deal. It is at the moment. It is when you're like, yeah. It's hard to explain, eh? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. So, I don't want to. You'd be lying if you said there's zero chance. I mean, unless you were, yeah.
You
Not
know,
me.
it's like zero chance. I don't think there is a zero chance because even when you think there's a zero chance, something could come up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
You know, I
something
mean,
could come.
when I was a Christian for many years, I never thought I would stop believing in God. I mean, that was the last thing I ever thought would happen. But sure enough, eventually, I'm at a point where I don't believe in God anymore. And it happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you, what was I going to say? There's always that chance of you leaving it because I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, there is always that chance you leave.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to stay diligent, you know?
Yeah.
So let me answer. There's a guy in the chat, Rusty.
Yeah, Rusty.
I hope you hear me. All right. I don't think God is an impossibility. So to answer your question real fast, I don't think it's an impossibility. I think it's highly unlikely. That's where I stand.
Yep, I think I don't have sort of anything to lose whether I believe or not too. And some people it's a bit different. Like it doesn't really change my work, doesn't change my relationships. So it's not like if I left it would be for my own reasons, and becoming a Christian was all my own reasons. So I could see someone say for life a bit more solid if it was things would happen, there'd be consequences, but not for me.
Yeah, I think when you're making your own decisions, which it sounds like you are, all right, you leave open the at least possibility that you can change your mind. That's how I see myself as well. I mean, I can change my mind. I see that as a possibility.
Yep. And I think there's always going to be the political aspect too. If you're cool with whatever's going on with the church in that way, probably going to be cool. Probably going to be cool with things not changing too much from being sort of swayed from other outside things.
Yeah. Is Australia considered a conservative type country or a more progressive liberal type country or somewhere in the middle?
Slightly more liberal. It's slightly more liberal, but not by heaps. But it is more liberal just by a little bit. That's the last sort of, yeah. It's definitely been more liberal. But we call Liberal the Conservative Party, so that kind of fucks the language a bit.
Yeah.
Because you call on Liberal, the Liberal Party's the Conservative, more conservative. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit more left, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Like you look at who's won over the last 50 years. You could come to that. Say that pretty safely. Yeah.
I would say America was heading left, heading liberal, but is now kind of taking a course to the other side, you know?
Yeah. It's pretty tight race nowadays. Right. Today, it's definitely tight race.
Yeah. Let me let Rusty in. Done. Rusty. Add to stage. Let's see. Rusty, you there?
Yes, I am. I appreciate you having me on. I was just flipping through YouTube and saw the video, and I just decided to come listen.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. All right, I'm not a professional. I think you could tell, right?
Oh yeah, that's no problem. No problem. Most of us aren't.
Right? But I do like to have dialogue with people who believe different things, and I like to learn, and maybe I can help other people, and maybe something I know that they don't know.
Yes, of course. I was
So
just wondering. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt anything y'all were in. I was just because I joined late. I don't know if you've answered it. I haven't ever seen your channel before. I was just wondering, just kind of and when you decided, and what kind of led up to, you know, like you said, not thinking God is an impossibility, but an improbability. What led you to, go from Christian to that?
yeah, I mean that's it's quite a journey, really. I mean, at least when you're devout, I considered myself devout at one time, dedicated to Christianity, and lived a decent part of my life dedicated to Jesus, So it was a slow type of thing. So it wasn't like an immediate disavowalment of my previous beliefs. It was more slow. It was intellectual, I would say. So it was a lot of studying things I had not previously considered. And little by little, the things I held to be dear and held to be foundational in my life started crumbling little by little. And it got to a point where eventually I came to a moment when I realized I just don't believe it. you know? And that
Okay,
was
okay.
a little bit, I would say it was uneasy for a little while because you believe something so much and you dedicate your life to it and it becomes part of your identity, you know.
So you were raised Christian.
No, not I mean I was raised Christian in a cultural sense.
Right,
uh,
right, right.
but I became born again, where I dedicated my life to Jesus
Okay.
uh, as an adult. And, that was quite a long time ago now. I'm 62 years old. So, you know, I've been out of Christianity for about 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
But for about, I guess, between, I have a hard time with dates, probably like between the ages of uh, 27 to about 12 years ago, and I'm 62, was much, believing wholeheartedly in Christianity.
Okay. So then it like, what was it that, what was like a few of the main things that you learned or that you thought about that made you go, well, you know what? I don't think I believe this anymore.
Yeah. Um,
Was it just like an intellectual thing? You think it's just, intellectually this is more true or correct, or is it something deeper?
um, I would say primarily for me, it was intellectual. I mean, primarily. Um, I started learning things that I thought were true that I previously thought was not true, and then it impacted the way I viewed the Bible. Right, so the Bible sections of the Bible I started doubting, right, and then it was one thing after another. The things that I took as gospel truth, for lack of
Hey,
another word.
so so you don't think the gospel is true?
No, not now. I don't. But
Oh,
I lived.
okay. You
I
like
lived.
you don't believe Jesus was a person or that he died on a cross and resurrected?
Well, there's things I don't know. All right,
Rusty, you
so
get me worked up now. Once you start mentioning Jesus, gets
listen.
me
I
worked
don't
up.
know. I personally don't know if he lived. I personally think it's likely he did live. That there was someone named Jesus. All
Oh,
right, but
I 100% do. I think it's very likely just the supported evidence that support the gospels.
well, I mean, I think there's evidence to support, and not it's not overwhelming to me, all right? But I do think there's evidence to support that there was someone named Jesus, and he was some sort of a figure in religion, in Judaism at the time. I think there's evidence to that I could say, yeah, that's definitely something I may believe. All right, but when it goes into the supernatural things, those are just for me became fictional, legend, mythology type understanding.
Oh,
And
of
so,
course. Yeah, I understand that. The way I think of it is, um, you know, if there is a supernatural God, then, you know, all the supernatural things in the gospels are totally plausible. You know what I mean?
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, and I get that too,
Yeah.
but
And it's not just
other,
that, like, you know, it's just that, you read it and you're like, well, if there is a supernatural God, if you believe in it, then, then that's all plausible. I believe the gospels to be, true. They're pretty well supported. 5,800 Greek manuscripts, 10,000 Latin manuscripts, and over 9,000 manuscripts in other languages that all agree and to an infinitesimal degree.
well, let me ask you this, because I don't see it the same way, right?
Okay. Yeah, no, I
Um,
understand.
like, to me, it doesn't matter for me personally how many times people copied a book. All right. That's not of importance to me, really. It's not like a major factor. Like, to say that, there's so many thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of a book or pieces of a book, that's not that persuasive to me. All right.
Okay.
Um,
You don't You don't think, all those supporting manuscripts that agree are very much evidence?
What I think, all right, is that there are copies of these things. All right. There's no originals. I mean, this is just, and I'm talking fact. I'm not talking, just my understanding. That's a fact. There are no originals, right? So we do have copies, and then we have copies of copies of copies of copies, and translated in different languages and all that. But that's not as strong to me as, you know, original copies and eyewitnesses, and et cetera, and you know, different evidence that can be physical. Those things are, I guess, I consider at a higher level than just, there's a bunch of copies of a book, or variety of different books.
And you think that's the possibility of them being untrue is because they're copies?
No, it doesn't mean they're untrue. I mean, it could be a zillion copies and they could be true. All right. It's just that when I analyze what is in the book, and I use my own brain because that's all I have. Okay. I don't have anything else other than my own ability to think. All right. It doesn't ring true to me. All right. At one time it did. So I've just, at this point, that does just, so many things don't ring true at all. All right. And that's where, like, pieces of the Bible would fall back when I was deconverting, right? It was pieces that would fall little by little until eventually I thought there's nothing here anymore. I gotta be true to myself. And I think everyone does, right? We
Okay.
can't lie to ourselves, right? You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. You can't lie to yourself.
I mean, if we're lying to ourselves, what are we doing, right? we're just, we're
Yeah, it's
just
just the
saying
problem
things
is,
that,
as far as like the existence of God goes, um, you know, the problem is like I run into things like love and morality.
yeah. I believe in love and I believe in morality. So those are two things I don't have a problem believing in.
And not necessarily morality, but do you believe in moral absolutes?
Uh
Because that would be one of the main things I could have. Because in order to be atheist and even agnostic in some ways, it's in order to be completely intellectually honest and completely, in order to be intellectually honest, you would have to, decide that every single thing you think about morality, the opposite side being equally valid.
yeah, I don't see it as black and white as that.
Okay.
I don't think like that. Right? I think morality, it gets real technical and heady, brainy, if we're going to say, is there an objective morality or not? I think that's a philosophical question and can have an answer of yes, there is an objective morality, or no, there isn't.
Well, I do believe it is, but that can only be possible if there is a God.
I don't think that. I think it's possible if there is no God. All right.
Why?
It could be, well, there could be something that we could all agree upon, and everyone can say, yes, that is wrong. Right.
But
And
but
we
ultimately,
could
but
hold that
ultimately,
up.
even
We could hold it up as an objective morality. Right. I'm not
okay.
saying, I mean, let's take, I mean, I could, let's
I
take
see what you
something
mean
that
there by that.
almost everybody would agree on, right? Most people, not 100%, but pretty close to 100%, would say murdering people, against the law for no reason would be an immoral act,
Right. And you think that's where we would get objective morality from because we all kind of agree upon it.
And you could take that is murder wrong, and we might
See, the only
take
problem
that
with
as
that,
an
though, is
objective
ultimately it's
statement.
still just relative. You know what I mean? Because let's just say, hypothetically, society had evolved to say that things like murder were right. I still don't think it's right. Even if whatever society says, I know that it's wrong either way. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I doubt, Rusty. I'm an atheist, and you're not an atheist, all right? And I doubt that
And by the way,
on
but I'm
morality.
sorry to cut you off. I don't want to like argue with you or anything. I just want to have a discussion. I know we have been. I just don't want to get into an argument or anything.
No,
Sorry, you
I'm
can go
not
ahead.
arguing. I'm saying that I'm trying to demonstrate something that maybe we could agree on. We probably have similar morality, all right? Probably not identical, but very similar. Like we both agree that murdering someone is wrong. All right. Now, where did you get your morality? All right. I'm going to ask you that. I will say I got my morality at this point in my life because I think it's just harmful to other human beings, and it's just something wrong to do. I mean,
So you're ascribing human beings value in that way?
yeah, I think human beings have value. Sure.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, where would they get that value if there is no God?
I would say it's innate. I mean, I look at myself. Do I value my life? Yes. All right. So therefore, I value other people's lives. I mean, it's just like a natural thing to me. It's not complicated. It's like, of course, I value my life, and of course, I'm going to value the lives of other people. You know,
Yeah,
I don't need
of course,
I
and
don't need a God. I
I
don't need
100%
God
agree
to
with the
help
way
me.
you think that. I 100% agree with the way you think that. Um, it's just that when thinking that, it's just like ultimately, where does that value come from? It doesn't really come from anywhere. It's just kind of what we think. We're the, you know, first ones to think, but if you believe in God, you know, you can believe that human beings have innate value because they're made in the image of God. And that's where we get,
If you believe
these
in God,
morality.
right, if you believe in God, you feel that God has given these things, right? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say it again.
If you
I'm
believe
sorry, I'm in the weight room right now.
okay, as someone who believes in God, you feel that God has given these moral things or principles to human beings, right?
Okay.
I don't see that, and we just disagree. I don't. I feel that there's no need for God to give me that morality. Right? I already have it, and I have it through the evolution of humanity. It's just the
So
evolution
you
of
think that the evolution of humanity is what gives us value? So we're just like
not value,
really highly
morality.
evolved, you know, and everything in our brain, like love and all that, it's not really like real morality. It's no absolute rights and wrongs. It's just really complex biochemical reactions.
Ultimately,
I
yes.
would argue that it's
Ultimately.
not. I would argue that it's a god, and I would argue that things like rape and murder are not relatively wrong, depending on how your society grew or what society you're from. I would argue that they're absolutely wrong, no matter what, because all humans have innate value because they're made in the image of God, not because we've evolved from cosmic sloop. You know what I
And
mean?
I would say you feel that way because you believe in God. Okay.
Okay.
And that's acceptable, all right? But I don't believe in God, and I believe in being a good person, and I believe in helping my fellow human beings. All right?
Right.
And I
Okay.
don't do it
And that just
to
right. And you just believe that and helping your own human beings. 100%. I totally respect that. It's just that, you know, helping them. So that just, you do ascribe value to them.
of
Right.
course. I said that.
And I don't mean this. I don't want to say, oh, if you don't believe in God, you have to hate people. Of course, that's not what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Okay,
It's
that's
just like
yeah.
ultimately, in order to be completely intellectually honest, you have to know that in the back of your mind, truly, no matter how much you ascribe to them, humans don't really have any value. We're just, clumps of highly evolved cosmic sloop
I
floating on a
don't
rock.
I don't see it that way. I mean, that's how you see it. And I respect what you believe, but for me, I think human beings do have value. Okay. It's not because a God said they have value. It's because the value is just apparent to me. It's natural to me to think that human beings have value. I don't need to go somewhere and have them tell me that. It just that doesn't, it's like I was the same person when I was a Christian and not a Christian. All right. Um, I didn't do less bad things when I was a Christian. All right. I do nice things now when I'm not a Christian. All right. And it just doesn't have any practical implication for me. Maybe some people need that.
I would argue it does have a little bit of practical implication if you do believe that there is a God and the Gospels are true, and that's the way to eternal life is through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I know that rhymed, but
Yeah, if you believe that, then it's important to you. Okay,
yeah, of course, it's
but
kind of like
I could tell you when you don't believe that, it's still important to you. I mean, my family is important to me. It doesn't matter
of course.
if I believe in God or not.
It's just
And
that, like, if there is no God, like, say, like, do my parents really love me, or is it just a complex biochemical reaction? Is it just a drive to keep the
well,
genetic pool going?
but it's not. When you go deeper and deeper into these things, which most people don't do, right? Most people don't go that deep into this stuff. But when you go deeper and deeper into these things,
Yep.
like what is love, right? I mean, ultimately, yes, it has chemical basis. I mean, that's what we know. I mean, I don't need to go that deep to know that I love somebody. I just love somebody, right? But if I go deeper and deeper and deeper into what is love and breaking it down all the way, you can break it down to a chemical level in the brain. Love is in the brain. All right. Love is not an object floating around, right? It's something that is a product of our brains, our emotions, our feelings, and these it comes out of our brains. All right. So ultimately, there's chemistry involved, even in romantic love. You can look at someone in a romantic way because there's something chemical going on. All right. And you don't need to understand it, right? But you could say, yeah, there's some kind of an attraction going on, right? Whereas with this other person, I don't have that attraction going on, and you could just be a natural man, a natural person, and just live your life, or you can go deeper and deeper into why am I attracted to that person? Why do I love that person? And I would say ultimately, yeah, you're going to have chemistry involved.
My coach came in the weight room to talk to me just for a second, so there was some parts of that I might have missed a little bit of.
That's okay. I know you're working out. Are you young or old?
I'm a college football player at Henderson State University.
What state is that?
It's in Arkansas.
Arkansas?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Is that Division 1, 2, 3? Or
We're Division II.
what position?
I play offensive tackle.
It must be a big guy.
Yeah, I'm about 6'5", 306 pounds.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something for fun, okay? And because I don't like to be ultimately serious about everything. All right.
Of course, me neither.
But, I'm
Something big.
62 years old. Okay. And I'm not strong. I haven't done an exercise in over 20 years. But 23 years since I've done a single exercise. Okay. Right. But when I was young, right, I started out as a very skinny kid, and I'm only 5'10". And I started out as a skinny kid. I was always into sports, though. I love sports. And I went into weightlifting, and I was a fanatical weightlifter. All right. And I went from 140 pounds, which when I was a boxer at 140 pounds,
Wow.
and I ended up after at least 15 or more years of straight weightlifting, I got up to 260, and I was 5'10", 260, but I could bench press 425 pounds, and I had 21-inch arms, and that was natural. I never did a steroid ever, but that was like 15 to 20 years of straight up crazy ass weightlifting.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
You know, but and you know what I have now? I just had triple hernia surgery. I had hernias for so many years, and I finally got them taken care of. So that was like a week ago. I had 3 hernias repaired.
Oh, I'm glad.
But I appreciate you, Rusty, and I don't think we're ever going to necessarily agree. All right. But you know, I don't.
I just wanted to because I was talking and I could only hear the last part of when you were talking in bits. I just wanted to kind of get one more clarification thing. And I super appreciate you having me on, letting us talk. So when you kind of agreed with what I said, that yeah, you feel love and you do ultimately agree that like it is like a chemical thing going on.
On it, as you break down things like love, right? Love is not physical, right? So it's not like a thing we hold on to and say this is love and we have it in our hand. It's it's something that happens, and it happens from our brain. It comes from our brain. All right. The Rihanna song is one of my favorites. Love on the Brain. Love that song. All right. But I think there's truth in that one title, Love on the Brain. All right. And when you get into the brain, you get into chemicals and you get into neurons and this sort of thing. So ultimately, love does, at the very least, have a chemical aspect. And I'm equating that so that you may understand to attraction. You know, you can be attracted to another person in a romantic way, and it could be another person you're just not attracted to in that way. All right. Because it's chemical. Right.
Okay.
There's like a dynamite, and I don't, without getting into sexuality and all that, but
It's like
there's a dynamite
love
that goes
is
off
not-
when the two people meet and they're totally, chemically attracted to each other. It's like an explosion.
yeah. So you're okay. So yeah. So you do okay. So it's like yeah, love is like ultimately just like can be like a sex drive or a drive to preserve the genetic pool or things like that. There's no like ultimate just truth to that love. That's
Love is
like
something we experience as human beings,
right,
and we could describe it. We can come up with words to describe it.
right,
But ultimately, it's something that occurs and emerges from our brain, which is purely a chemical thing. It's a physical thing.
okay.
That's kind of what I think about love.
Okay.
not that I'm an expert on love,
Yeah.
but that's kind of what I think. I don't think it was given to us by a person. You know?
And I don't know a lot of details. This is kind of like it's the same it's like the same talking point that we're talking about right now, but it's like the polar opposite, to just like, kind of like pivot, but we're talking about the same thing kind of here. It's just the opposite way. You may know, I don't know a whole lot about this, but I know, I'm sure you know of the Nuremberg trials.
Not a whole lot. I know they happened, and I
About
know
the like the
about the
Nazi officers and
Holocaust, and yeah,
of
people
course,
involved with the Holocaust
yes,
that were
and
in
they were
America.
trying the Nazi officers and things like that,
It was in
and
America, right?
trying them for their crimes.
In America, right?
Did the Nuremberg trials, did they take place in America or did they take place overseas?
I thought I could be wrong because I'm not definitely not schooled on it that much. I thought they were trying people who were involved in the Holocaust that fled. That's what I thought. I could be wrong.
Okay. It wouldn't be like in Nuremberg.
Oh, maybe so. Like I
I
said,
mean,
I'm
it's
not
I just don't know.
definitely not
Anyway,
saying I know for sure.
but that wasn't the point I was trying to make. Anyway, but you do know, like the general gist, they were trying the Nazi officers for their crimes,
Yeah,
to the Jewish people during the war.
yeah,
But something brought the Nuremberg trials to a halt at one point, I believe, and it was the argument that, the men were just following orders.
yeah.
So how could it be, really their fault? They were just following orders.
Right.
Um, but then what got the Nuremberg back trials going again? I don't remember the man's name. He said, um, orders are orders, from your Nazi higher ups, but there's a law above those orders that tells you gassing Jews is wrong, working them to death in death camps is wrong.
Right.
There's a law above that law. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing that Martin Luther King said in his peaceful protest. There were, Alabama preachers and there were some priests, I believe, and they were saying, hey, why don't you stop this? You know, just follow Alabama state law, And
Yeah.
he said, there's a law above the law of this land,
Right.
and it's God, meaning,
Right.
you know,
I mean,
owning
I
black
could
people is wrong, and what Martin Luther
I
King's
could
case,
relate to that.
segregation is wrong.
I could relate to that. I just don't think it's, I don't think it's God, but that's because I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a, you know, like to me, it's like a secular humanist type thing.
Okay.
At
Yeah.
this point in my life. So, but yeah, I
Okay.
think it's wrong. No matter what, the people were following. And I do think it was wrong. I don't need a God to tell me that.
Okay. So if you don't need a God, let's just say hypothetically, like you were raised um, in Nazi Germany as a young
Right.
boy during that time,
Right.
or let's just say you were one of those officers following orders. Would you, being raised in that environment, then think, well, you know what? I'm just following orders. I guess I better do this. Or would you recognize, hey, this is wrong?
I've
Or would
I've
you do
always
what the majority of them did? You know what I mean? Because it's
no,
easy to say,
I mean
oh, we wouldn't. But
I've always been a free thinker. Um, I've never been a person who just follows orders. I have a rebellious streak in me.
yeah,
So I would definitely not follow an order of somebody telling me to go kill Jewish people.
of course. And so we would agree that it's wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And your reasons are just because
Different
you ascribe them value.
Yeah, I mean, we in the beginning, I told you I do ascribe value to human beings.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I'm just reiterating that it's you ascribing the value.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. A lot of people, Christian people, will say, "Well, you're your own God," right? And I am in a limited way, right? It's not like I think I'm a supernatural being.
A lot of
That
Christian people will say that.
Yeah, they'll say, "Well, you're your own God anyway,"
Uh,
because they believe in an external God to them, right? There's a God outside of themselves, right?
right.
For me, as an atheist, I am totally my own God in that way. All right. So
Do you know what it would take you to like believe in God?
yeah, I think it would take uh, something at this point in my life. Now, in the past, it was easy, right? Because I did believe in
You were
God.
already a believer in the
Yeah,
past, right?
I was a believer, so it was easy. But at this point in my life, it would have to take a God making themselves totally detectable to me um, in a way that was not my thoughts, but outside of my own thoughts, that I could literally feel, touch, hear, see those types of things. And I don't think that's possible. So I'm not expecting it,
Okay.
but that would be something that would, like, if God came here right now, all right, and demonstrated to all of us here in this room that it was a God and here he was, I mean, yeah, I'm in. I'm in. But I don't ever hear that and I never see that. All I get is people saying what they believe. And at this point in my life, it just doesn't mean much what people believe. Right? People
So,
believe all kinds of things.
so like the things I said about like, value and morality and things, it's just kind of what I believe. You don't think some of those moralities really are like truly innate outside of just your thoughts or my thoughts? Because I mean, like, I would argue like rape is wrong. You know,
And
that
I agree with you.
not just what I think, not just because I ascribe people value. I just believe it's wrong
Yeah, why? That's the big question, right?
because we all have value, and that's given to us because we're made in the image of God. God created us. It's not
Okay,
because I ascribed us value. You know what I mean? In my
now
own
if you
mind, it's not that I believe we have value. I believe, you know what I mean?
if you ask me the same question, I have the same answer. Yes, it's wrong. All right. But the reason I have that I think it's wrong is
It's because you believe society
simply
decided it.
no, I think that's a small part of it. All right. It's actually for me, it's a minor part of it because I'm my own God. Okay. All right. For me, it's as simple as my morality is based on is this something that harms other human beings or myself? I include myself in that category. Or is this something that helps other human beings and myself? And that's pretty much it. It's not really complicated. So I see that as being something that without a doubt harms other people, meaning
Okay.
a woman, right? And it also harms myself. All right. So that's something that to me is immoral. Period.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, and I completely understand the way, the way you think about it, and the way you get, the right and wrong from it. It was just, for me, if I'm thinking that way, it's just like ultimately, I know that it still doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If it's just me ascribing the value, because let's just say hypothetically you ascribed it, different or other than. Like in somebody else's mind, they may hate somebody. Like let's just say hypothetically Hitler. Hitler hated the Jews. If there
Right.
is no God, like relatively, that's not really just right or wrong. You may think you say it's wrong because you ascribe people value,
Yeah. So
but
ultimately, each person does
ultimately,
their
I
just
would
due.
argue that it ultimately is wrong. But I run into things
True.
like Hitler and Stalin, and I would say ultimately they're wrong. It's not, oh, I think they're wrong, and that's it. I do think it's ultimately wrong, not relatively wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do agree. It's just I don't attribute that ultimate to a God. That's pretty much it. It's not that
Well, we
I
don't agree that it's ultimate. I mean, of course we agree that it's
it is
wrong. I know that
ultimate.
yeah. I know you agree it's wrong. You don't believe it's ultimate though, correct?
Yeah, for me, it is ultimate.
But yeah, for you, but that could be different for another person, you're saying?
It could be, and we know that to be true. I mean, there
W-
are people that have different moralities.
We
Right?
do. Okay, I would just argue that there are moral absolutes. I would argue that, you know, what Hitler did to the Jews is absolutely wrong. I would argue that rape is absolutely wrong. Not just wrong to me because I don't like it. If I just say that, you know what I'm saying? If that kind of thinking, I'm just like, I'm being arrogant and I'm thinking, oh, my ways is better than yours. Because if I don't believe in a God and I'm thinking, wow, this guy is completely wrong, it's just like that's just what I think. Is there's really no right or wrong to it. It's just,
I mean,
what I believe.
I
But
I don't get caught up in that thing where I think versus what is right and wrong for the society and all that, because to me it doesn't. Even if you say right, even if you go and say, well, there's a God and he told us what is right and wrong, and we can count on that, right? And that's my ultimate authority. Even if you go that far, you're still a mind and an independent agent. And you could
100%,
choose,
yeah, God gives us free will, and I
yeah,
100%
you could
believe that.
choose to act out differently, all right, or not. So
But do you
ultimately,
think free
it
will
just
can exist
doesn't,
without a
like,
God?
to me, it's like the whole moral thing is like, so what, you're still, and ultimately, if you go deeper and deeper and deeper,
Well, I mean, I don't think it's
ultimately,
so what. I mean, I think it matters, right and wrong. I
I
think
do
rape
too.
definitely is wrong. I wouldn't want society to someday, say that rape is right, and then I'm just going to agree with it, and
No,
everybody
I,
agrees
I
with it.
would,
I
I
would
would
want to be
not,
that guy that stands out and says this is absolutely wrong,
I
no
would
matter
be
what you
right
all agree
there.
on.
Listen, I'm an atheist and I'd be right there with you. So I know what to tell
Yeah,
you.
for
Right?
sure. And
It's
I
just
would
that
be
we,
happy. I would be happy to stand alongside you if that ever happened. Right?
yeah, and I would stand alongside you as well. It doesn't matter to me whether the person is atheist or not, or
Okay.
Christian
Yeah.
or not.
Awesome. And I just have like literally just one. I'm gonna get off and thanks for having me on. And I'm sorry
Yeah,
for interrupting you just a
I
second ago,
got
by the way.
someone named Tyler I want to get to.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you one more question before I hop off and get out of your hair.
Yeah. Don't make
Um,
it too difficult because then it'll take me a half hour to explain it.
no, we'll try to keep it below 5 minutes, maybe. But all right. I was just wondering. You said something. We were talking about free will a second ago. I mean, just for like a split second. I was just wondering if you think, as an atheist, if there is no God, if you think we have free will.
I have thought about that, and I have to give you my honest answer that I feel comfortable with. And that
Okay.
is, I do not know.
You do not know. Hey,
I don't know.
I'm glad you're like, honest enough to just say I don't know.
I don't.
That's
I'll
a
tell
great
you,
yeah, that's a great way to
intuitively,
answer.
intuitively, I certainly feel like I have free will. All right. So my intuitive answer is, of course, I have free will. All right. But there's another philosophical answer, that would say maybe not. So I feel comfortable for myself saying I don't know. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess with that, I would just say, I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, and free will to me is the thing that God gives us. That I believe God gives us free will, and I believe if you're an atheist, I don't know what every atheist believes or not. It was just well, not if you're an atheist. I just mean if there is no God, I don't really believe we would probably have free will because
Yeah.
whatever the circumstances is that led to the beginning of the universe, and then however humans came to be, we would just be, you know, evolved cosmic sloop, none of our actions would just be free. I mean, they would just be biochemical reactions, just whatever our brain is happening to tell us to do. You know, we may be able to consciously think we have free will, but I mean, everything is just kind of,
I will
biologically happening.
I
You know
will
what I
tell
mean?
you this, Rusty. Um, Atheists fall on both sides of that question. You can find atheists that will say we do not have free will, and you could find atheists that say we do have free will, because that's not a question that atheism even conquers, or really attempts to explain. I mean, you can be an atheist and fall on either side of that.
Right. Okay. Yep. All right. Thanks a lot for having me on. I was just wondering, I know you're an atheist and everything, but you seem like such a nice guy and we've had a great conversation. I was wondering, before I shut up and let other people talk, I was wondering if you mind if I just have a quick prayer with you right fast.
Yeah, I don't think it means anything, but if it makes you feel good, yes.
All right. Lord God, thank you for this day. Thank you for all your blessings, God. Thank you for being just such an awesome and amazing, wonderful God. Lord, you created the universe, yet you still want to have a personal relationship with us. Lord, thank you for sending Jesus Christ to die on the cross for us and take that punishment for our sins. Lord God, you are so great and so amazing. I know that you put individual callings as well as challenges in each one of our lives. So Lord, I pray that you just open our hearts and minds to you so that we can listen to the plans you have for us. We can live for you. And God, I pray that it's all for your glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right.
Hey,
Thank
well,
you,
awesome.
Rusty.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a good rest of your
I
workout.
just, hey Rusty, I just want to say before you go, thanks for coming on here, and thanks Lou for hosting this conversation. Rusty, you were killing it, and you inspired me to come on, and I kind of wanted to listen to more what you guys had to say. And I think the dialogue's really good. So thanks for that.
Hey, that's awesome. I'm
Tyler,
going to get back to my workout. I think I'll leave it on and listen. And hey, thanks for having me on.
thank you. Tyler, I'm going to turn my light on. Give me 1 second, because I'm in my front porch and it's getting really dark. So let me just turn the light on in my porch. All right, that should be better. Yeah.
So how's it going?
Yeah, that's better. Anyway, glad to have you in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As you might see, I like to be very casual. I'm not a professional at any of this.
Yeah, me neither, man.
But I do like to talk and, express different thoughts about religion and atheism, also belief,
Yeah, man. Yeah, this whole conversation you guys are having really caught my attention. I wanted to bring it back to something Rusty was talking about. You guys had a whole talk about morals and about ethics and about whether there is a moral absolute or whether there's not.
Yeah.
I think and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think what he was getting at is there's a difference between maybe objective morality and subjective morality. And I think if you believe in objective morality, that he's presenting evidence for God. So we were talking about, we all four of us or all three of us in this call can agree that murder is wrong. Yeah. But who says that murder is wrong, or where do we get that from? So I think maybe your worldview, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in your heart, you feel that murder is wrong, right? And we both agree on that. Yeah. But if somebody else thinks that murder is good, right, and they're their own God, well, then murder is good. It's not good or bad. It just is, right?
No, I don't think it goes all the way that far.
Right. If there's no mind prior to the human mind to dictate what is good and what is bad, or what is right and what is wrong, then all of our ideas of what is good or what is wrong is just a crapshoot, right? In your opinion, murder is wrong, but in my opinion, murder might be right? Who's to say who's right? And it would be not maybe a little bit arrogant for you to tell me that, hey, murder is wrong. Well, who's to say that, it's totally subjective. For you, it's not. For me, I'm my own God. Maybe murder is good for me. That makes me happy. So I think what he's getting at, just to sum up, is if you believe an objective morality, if you believe that murdering is objectively bad and not just bad because our law says it's bad, or not just bad because most people agree it's bad, it is objectively bad, then that has to come from somewhere, some mind prior to the human minds to come up with that.
Well, I understand that idea. Okay. So I don't think it's something that is over my head. All right. I don't see it the way you see it. I don't think like you think. All right. In other words, for me, you can have something that is subjectively wrong. So you could be of a position that morality is subjective, or you can be of a position morality is objective, and it still doesn't require a God, right?
Okay.
Like there are, I watch a lot of stuff, okay, because I try to keep myself educated, not through school, but just through trying to understand the world better, right?
Sure.
There are plenty of atheists that will tell you morality is objective, and there are plenty of atheists that will tell you it's not. And the reason is it's how you view this objective versus subjective thing, right? So Christians, as far as I could tell, generally think God is objective and the object is God, right? I mean, that's the way I understand it.
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. But there are atheists that would say morality is objective as well. It's just their object is not God. Okay.
So can I ask which one you believe? Do you think it's subjective or do you think it's objective?
I tend, and this is again, it's a belief. Okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because I don't know ultimately for sure.
Yeah,
If
I don't know
knew,
everything
I
either.
would feel comfortable telling you I know. All right.
Right. Well,
But
what do
I
you
don't know.
believe?
But my belief is it is most likely subjective. All right.
Okay.
That's not to say that that that's a what I find is that's almost a trigger word when I talk to a Christian, right? It's like a trigger. Subjective, bad. But I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just, I like to be in reality. I like to see things for what is real. All right. And I try to determine truth to the best of my ability. I know I can be wrong because I don't believe in perfectionism. Right. But I see it as subjective. Right. But I see it as subjectively true. Like, is it bad to murder someone? It's subjectively true. I mean, it's not a good thing. It harms
in
us.
your perspective, like in your
Absolutely.
subjective. Okay. Yeah.
Right, but you and I agree because I could tell by the way you asked the question. All right. And that is not everyone thinks that's bad, right? There are murderers who think it's good to murder.
Mm.
Thank goodness there's not too many of them, right? But there are some, right? There are examples of people that say, no, it's a good thing, right?
Right.
So you admit that even if it is objectively wrong, there's still a human being involved, and they're going to make their own decision.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right. So in the after it's all said and done, I don't think it much matters if you think it's subjective or objective, because even if you thought a God said it was wrong, you could still disobey the God. So what?
Yeah. I think like for me, that I feel like that's a really tough worldview to actually live out. I think if you think in your subjective perception that murder is wrong, and like you said, there's people who believe it's right, then it's not right or wrong. It just is. People just kill each other. There's no you might think that humans have value, which I agree with, but somebody else might not think that. So it's really, humans might have value, but they might not. So it seems it's arrogant. I don't mean to call you arrogant,
listen.
but yeah, I think it's arrogant to tell somebody
by
else.
Talking to you, Tyler, you're a gentleman, so I'm not going to take offense. Okay?
Yeah, me neither. I'm not going to be offended. You can go as hard as you want, but it's arrogant for you to tell somebody else, "Hey, murder is wrong." That when that's just your perspective, that murder is wrong, right? Who are you to tell somebody else? Who are you to go to another culture, maybe, or another group of people, or a cult or something that thinks murder is good, and tell them, "Hey, guys, you got to stop murdering because it's bad," right? It's not bad or it's not good. That's just your subjective perspective, but their subjective perspective is that it's good and that it improves their life, right? So I think that's a really hard worldview to live out. Yeah, personally.
I mean, if my experience was that it's been a hard worldview to live out, I would admit it. Okay. I'm going by my own experience, my own personal life, right? I don't struggle with it. So
okay. Fair enough.
It's not something I'm not dealing with, oh gee, I need everything to be objectively true. All right. That's not something I'm struggling with. So my own personal experience, which is subjective, right? Because it's my personal experience, is not yours, right? My personal experience is no, it's not something I struggle with. It's not something I have difficulty with. Right.
Yeah. I'm not saying you have necessarily difficulty with. I think just believing that. Yeah. Anyways, I think I made my point clear. I didn't want to. I wanted to ask if Flute Whistle. He's been waiting a while. I didn't mean to barge in on the conversation, but
we were talking. He's from Australia.
I had to put my flag up to represent.
Yeah, you come up with the video, so you get priority for that. So yeah, good on you.
Where are you from, Tyler?
Near Toronto.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah. Sorry,
you're not gonna become the 51st state of the United States.
Yeah. Well, Greenland's gonna be the 52nd too. So there you go. Sorry, Flute Whistle. Is there anything you wanted to jump in here with?
Well, I wanted to come in with a bit on. I'm surprised that you didn't say anything bad about. This is to Lou. You didn't say anything bad about our God. I'm surprised you didn't say anything about. Well, we're talking about morality. You kept it off God. Is that because you don't want to offend God?
No. I think the whole morality argument and saying there is an objective morality is evidence of God. That's where I was going with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant that to Lou. Lou hasn't questioned our God.
Let me tell you something.
Which is surprising because usually they say our gods are
definitely
this or this and that. And,
yeah, just so you both know, personally, I definitely question the morality of the biblical God. I mean, to me, it's very clear he does things that I would consider immoral.
Okay, what?
Right.
I mean, I don't have a Bible with me. Okay. So understand, I'm not going to be able to say, look here in this verse, all right, because I haven't even really read and studied the Bible for like 10 years, all right? But I did study the Bible for many years. So by memory, I know, things that are in the Bible, all right?
Sure. Can you give me an example?
All right, in the Bible, let's take the killing of babies. All right, for me, that's immoral. All right, in all circumstances. All right, it's just an immoral thing. All right, but we see God does order the killing of babies. That would be one thing. Slavery would be another. In my morality. Slavery is always wrong. All right. To own another human being is always a bad thing. And yet, the God of the Bible does say it's okay to own another human being. So there would be two things right there. You know?
Okay. I don't know. So I don't know where God orders babies to be killed, but on the slavery issue, you said that God condones slavery. That's nowhere in the Bible. I can guarantee you that God does not
definitely
condone slavery.
No, that's not in the Bible.
in the Bible.
That's not in the Bible.
Not in the Bible.
Do you guys have a Bible with you?
Yep. Got one right here.
Okay.
It's not in the Bible, but
Oh, it's
it
definitely
is
in the Bible.
no, sorry. It is in the Bible. It is not condoned in the Bible. So, for example, in the New Testament, during the period of the Roman Empire,
Well, let's
like 40 or 50% of the population of the Roman Empire were slaves. Like everybody was a slave. Doctors were slaves.
slavery was
Constructions were slaves.
very
So,
common.
yeah, absolutely. So it is going to be recorded in the Bible, and it's going to be explained by Jesus in the New Testament how to live in a messed up world where slavery is going on. But it's never saying that slavery is good or that you should go out and own people. It does condemn that.
So let's look at this, right?
Yeah.
Together. You have the Bible, I don't, but you can
Just
go
for the
together.
record, we've brought up God's morality ourselves, which a lot of apologists don't do. Just for the record.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you,
I'm-
Tyler.
No, thank you, Rusty. Thank you, Rusty.
I'm
And thank
saying
Rusty.
that my morality
Which is the first.
different than God's morality. Okay. So I'm making that clear. I'm not hiding from it. I'm telling you, I think God does some immoral things.
Okay, sure.
Now,
You know what, man? I think if it's been 10 years since you've read the Bible, I would, if you don't mind, if you're still questioning things about maybe your worldview and you don't have all the answers, I know I don't. But if you had, a spare few minutes every night, I would just start with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, just the Gospels again. If it's been 10 years, and it's only 150 pages, like you could get through it.
I've read them. Believe it or not, it's hard to, it may be difficult to believe, but I have read the Bible. I read the Bible for many, many years. I've read Matthew, Luke, John, and was it Matthew, Luke, John? What's the last one I'm missing? And that's just my
Luke, John, Mark.
screwed up brain.
Well, I agree. I think you probably have.
I've read
it tons of times,
countless times.
But it's been 10 years, and you're telling me that slavery is condoned in the Bible.
I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you.
Okay.
Right now. All right. I'm gonna ask you to listen to what I have to say about leading up to what I'm going to show you. Okay.
Sure.
And see if we get agreement. See if there's agreement or not. All right.
Okay.
So we both agree that slavery was common.
Yeah.
Especially back in that region of the world.
Oh yeah.
And especially in that time frame. Right?
Yep.
So we both agree on that. Right? I think we may agree that God doesn't have to answer to culture, right? Or no?
What do you mean answer to culture?
Well, culture can be, like we were talking before, there could be a culture where murder is good, right? God doesn't have to accept that, right?
Yeah.
So he's above that.
Yeah, right? he would condemn that.
Yeah, because he's above it, right? Yeah. He doesn't need to bow down to the culture that says we think murder is good. God can be above that and have some say in that matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in Exodus, there's verses about regulating slavery, right? There's verses about, you should not beat your slave until they die, right? Now, this is from God because it's coming through Moses, all right? And Moses is speaking for God, all right? It's not like he's just throwing this stuff out, right?
Yeah.
You know,
So,
he's speaking for God,
yep.
and he's saying that, well, don't beat your slaves, right?
That
And
seems like a
then,
good rule.
yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Then we go to Leviticus chapter in the 20s somewhere. All right. Maybe 22, maybe 25, somewhere in that area. There's
Yeah.
there's total explicit division of the types of slavery. All right.
Okay.
And God says to not that slaves that you take from the nation of Israel are to be held for 6 years, I believe it is. And on the 7th year, they're to be let free. But slaves you take from a foreign land are to be your property held generationally, never to not be your possession. And that to me is the clearest, thing. And it's not that a guy it's God saying that. All right. So to me, I don't see anything not clear about that. So look it up because I don't have it here. But
You said the 7th year.
it
Something about that?
describes two types of slaves. All right. And there are two types of slaves in the Bible. All right. There's an indentured servant type of slave, which would be a slave from the nation of Israel. I think the Bible says stuff like your brother, your group, don't take a permanent slave from your group. But when it comes to the foreign slaves, the book of Leviticus makes clear that God is saying it is perfectly acceptable to take foreign slaves as your property to be passed on generationally. And to me, I don't know any way around that. I mean, it's clear. It's as clear as I could ever read something. It's like totally clear to me. Now,
Yeah.
pull up the verse because
I'm looking for it. I'm in Leviticus around the 20s. I'm not seeing it, but maybe later we'll find it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna Google slavery Leviticus because I'm sure it's gonna pop up. Slavery.
So you're absolutely right in saying that slavery back then is maybe a little bit different than what slavery was, for example, 100 years ago in the States. Right? You're right when you said indentured servitude. It was a different kind of slavery. It was more you were indentured to your master for food, for water, for living, for a certain amount of years or until you pay off some sort of debt and then you're set free. Yeah, it was a different kind of slavery. It wasn't so much going and grabbing other people from free people and then enslaving them. And I think there's actually a passage somewhere in the Bible. I don't know where this is, but that actually condemns doing that, right? It's if you have indentured slaves, that's one thing, but if you're going to go and enslave a free person and bring them over and enslave them, that's wrong. I don't know where this is, so I can't back this up. But
I got it's 25 because I just Googled it.
Sure, yeah.
It's Leviticus 25, 44 to 46.
Yeah, there's 3 types of slavery. One's the indentured one, which is the worker. That one's probably the nicest.
Yes.
Then there's the one you brought up, the foreign one, which is more of a pretty much take in, you're a slave now for 7 years.
More, the foreign one is more of
which is
slavery.
Yeah, and there's also the inherited one. So we can't sort of get away from that. But
yeah, and inheriting a slave
yeah,
is immoral to me.
we're saying the most common one was the indentured worker slave, is what we think.
They both existed simultaneously.
Yeah.
Right? So that slavery in the Bible is not one type of slavery. It's
Yeah.
it's at least two distinct types of slavery. All right.
Yeah.
Now,
And
indentured servitude, that alone, I think, is immoral. But that's beside the point. All right.
Yeah.
I think that alone is immoral. All right. But you could argue maybe it's immoral, maybe it's not. All right. But I think all of us here would agree that chattel slavery or owning another human being is immoral. And yet the God says in Leviticus 25:44-46, which I just read, you could read it and see if there's any misunderstanding.
Yep. I'll just say one more point. I'm going to head out and let you guys keep going. So my translation says you may buy a foreign slave, not go and enslave like a free person. So I don't know if that's just my translation of this.
No, that is what it says. Buy.
Yeah. Buy a slave that's already a slave. So it's not taking a free person.
No,
and
you're
enslaving
purchasing a human being.
Yeah, you're right. It is bad, but
That's
it's hold on. It's not enslaving a free person. It's finding a slave that already is a slave in whatever version of slavery it is. I'm bringing them over. So I just want to wrap up with one point that is talked about in the New Testament, and it kind of relates to what we're talking about here. So Jesus was in a town preaching. I'm not sure what book this is, but maybe Flute Whistle knows. Some Pharisees come up to him and they say, "Hey, Jesus, in the law of Moses, in our Old Testament Bible, it says that if you want to divorce your wife, all you have to do is get a certificate of divorce and hand it to your wife, and then boom, you can have a divorce, right? So how come you're coming here and saying that actually divorce is wrong and you shouldn't be divorcing your wives?" And Jesus says, well, back then, your hearts were so hardened that God permitted this, but he never approved of it. Now I tell you that even for any reason to divorce your wife is a wrongdoing. So Jesus says that back then he permitted things to happen, not that he approved of it, but he permitted things to happen due to the hardness of our hearts, because we live in a messed up world, and it was even more messed up back then. Then Jesus comes and says, actually, this is what God intended the law to be. This is the ideal that we should be following. So when you get to the New Testament, nowhere in the New Testament is slavery condoned or encouraged. It's just teaching us how to deal with a world 2,000 years ago where slavery was very common. How can we make the best of the scenario? That's kind of my last point. I just want to bring up.
Can you read the verse? Because I want to remember it in further discussion.
Yeah, let me search it up real quick.
Leviticus 25:44-46.
Oh, you want that verse?
Yeah, I want to be able to hear it. I know it's
all
condoning slavery. So
Leviticus, sorry, one more time.
25:44-46.
Okay. If you need slaves, you may buy them from the nations around you, right? Not enslave free people. You may buy them from the nations around you. You may also buy the children of the foreigners who are living among you. Such children born in your land may become your property, and you may leave them as an inheritance to your children, whom they must serve as long as they live. But you must not treat any Israelites harshly. That's
it. I think that's immoral.
Yeah, I think God does too, and that's why I bring up the verse, and I'll try to find this too, the verse in the New Testament where Jesus talks about how God never approves of these things.
It is God who's saying that. It's God who's just said that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
God said,
well, whoever wrote the book of Leviticus is saying it.
for God, it's Moses.
On his behalf.
On his, and Moses giving the law of God.
Yep.
So we are to believe that God told Moses, who then informs us, human beings, that it is okay to own another human being as property.
Yeah.
And that's
it's
the extent of what I'm saying is right there. And to me, that alone is immoral. That's an immoral thing.
Okay. I agree, and that's why I bring up this verse where how, things in the Old Testament might be written down. Then Jesus comes along, and he's actually, this is what the ideal was. This is why these. So, anyways, good discussion. I gotta head out.
All right, nice
but
talking.
Now I got some reading to do on Leviticus. So, you got me there. I don't deny that there's some.
Listen, Tyler,
in the Old Testament.
Go to the Christian apologist who will give you some
We
explanation.
Well, I like to think for myself as well. So.
Well, then you should just read it for yourself.
We've got good verses against slaves that are local Israelites. We've got some good verses for them, but I agree we do have an immoral verse on the foreigner.
Yeah,
so I agree.
That was my only point. And it doesn't matter to me what some apologist says.
I'm good with that. And our good verses is Exodus 21.
Yes.
Leviticus 19:33 to 34, which is just before he says the foreigners, just before the moral one on the foreigners. Leviticus 19:33 to 34 is good for the Israelite, good for the local. And Deuteronomy 10, verse 18, 19, and Ezekiel 47, 22, 23, good for whoever's a Jew living in there that falls into a bad,
Well,
But I agree on the immoral on the foreigner.
What does Exodus say? Because I think it's where it's talking about beating. You can beat your slave as long as he doesn't die. Am I mistaken, or is that in?
No, I don't think that's the one. I think that one's in Deuteronomy, the one you're talking about with the rod, which is a condition on them, which is bad too. But it's it's a corporal, it's a punishment more than a saying bringing in slavery. It's more of it's a punishment, which is bad, and then kind of good when you think about not being able to kill them with the rod.
Well,
so it's kind of
here's the thing on that. All right. God is regulating the practice of slavery there.
Yeah.
He's saying in your slavery that you're already doing, right? He's saying you're already doing this.
Yeah. And we've got Paul. Paul in the New Testament says, obey your slave master. So
yes,
we do have a New Testament. I admit that one. And I think that it doesn't say whether that's foreign or not, but it does say obey your slave master. So there is a slave master at that in Paul's time, but I don't know where Paul was living at that time, but he was part of the New Testament.
Slavery was very common, and it was a big part of the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, with you on that.
I don't think anyone disputes that. It was a big part of their culture. Now that alone doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, I understand cultures have different things they do. Could be bad, could be good, right?
Yeah.
But when God himself says you can go buy slaves and own them as property, that's something else.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that is slavery. That's doing it. But we Ortland and Horn were having a debate with two scholars, and they were saying it was progressive, as in the Bible was setting it up to abolish.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And they were conceding that slavery is in there, and their main offense to that, or defense, was it was progressive to get away from it. Setting up to get away from it.
Yes.
But
And I have heard that as well. But okay.
Yeah.
My rebuttal to that would be yes, that is possible. All right. But all right, since when does God have to bend to the culture? I mean, when he said, "Thou shalt not murder," he wasn't bending to the culture, right? He made a declaration that was firm, right?
Yeah.
And now we have God saying, "Well, let me just little by little, we'll get rid of the slavery."
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it just doesn't do
And
it.
even though I don't like slavery, I like, that's God's word. That's firm. I like that. That's me. That's for me. That's the way I believe the Bible.
I mean, it says what it says.
Yeah.
And that's all I was trying to do with Leviticus. It's like, no, it says that, I mean,
Yeah.
it says that in the Hebrew, it says that in the Greek, it says that in the English. It just says it.
Yeah. That's it. So the God in the Bible and within the Bible, and this isn't to try and say slavery is fine, but this is how I read the Bible to stay by the Bible. In the Bible and within the Bible, God did have a temple. And of course, every temple's going to need workers. And anybody that's going to work in God's particular temple is going to have a certain somebody to go in there. Because God doesn't open up his temple to everybody. In the Bible, we find particularly a principle of God, of the Bible, use Levites. That's a done deal. Levites go into the temple. Right.
Well, if you
That's a
go,
done.
if you go by
If you're from the tribe of Reuben, Luke, if you're from the tribe of Reuben, and you choose to walk into that temple, you may find God may strike you. He might strike you. In fact, we have a story where they're carrying an ark and a priest slips and a non-Levite man reaches out to help him. And though it was a good deed, my God struck him dead because only Levites were allowed in that temple. Offensive. I agree, and I agree that's offensive to me. Now, if I was in the tribe of Joseph and I wasn't allowed in that temple, I would surely be offended. At my God, I'd be offended. However, if God says only a particular people can go into that temple, then let the rule remain. So I couldn't care less if I was offended by any verse by God. That's what God says. I'm more concerned about God's offense. Thank you.
Well, God's offense is quite apparent in the book. He's offended quite often. He gets offended a lot, you know. I mean, the Old Testament is filled with God being offended. He's offended at a lot of things, you know. They built a golden calf, right? And they were worshiping this golden calf. And he was offended by that. You know?
And I'd be offended back then too if I saw the calf.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's obvious. I mean, the one thing I'm saying is it's obvious God gets offended. He gets angry.
And if somebody put a golden calf and started worshipping in my town, I would get offended too with God. I'd be offended. But
See, I'm not like I don't care if people put a calf in my town and worship it. It just doesn't even bother me. But, but that's maybe because I'm an atheist. you know, I don't really take it serious, right? So it's like it's not really that offensive. It's just like to me, it's almost silly. You know,
yeah,
it's like silly. You're gonna worship the calf.
Oh.
I don't think there's any power in the calf. I don't think the calf is going to do anything. So for
it
me,
pissed him off.
it
Yeah.
pissed God off.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the same
but
with the flood of Noah.
it doesn't really piss me off. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, the flood of Noah, he took out, kittens, babies. That's our God. That's how powerful our God is. If people offend him and disrespect him or his son.
Yeah, he's very. I mean, I see that you're reading your Old Testament. I mean, God is, very offended at things that people do.
He could
Right?
wipe out, he can wipe out a whole nation in a second.
And he did.
And he did. He proved it.
Yes.
So we don't want to offend God, but when he's got verses that I'm not sure about, I like to go, that's God's word. That's God's word.
If you believe that. If you don't, like when I was a Christian, God's word was everything to me, right? I mean, kind of where you're at in life, right? It's very important to you, and it's very valuable to you, right? As someone who doesn't believe these things, it just doesn't. It's not of big value to me. I mean, I remember much of it. Like I said, I don't know chapter and verse, but I remember a lot of the things that happened in the book.
Yeah.
But it doesn't play a role in my life anymore.
And I think he still strikes down people today.
Well,
but
I think if he's the same God, then why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Right?
And I do like that it's written. I do like that some of those uncomfortable verses are 2,000 years ago. I do like that because a lot's changed from there. The cultures have changed, and obviously I'm against some of those verses morally a little bit, but I look at it as God's punishment. He's punishing sinners and he's punishing people that deserve it.
Well, I think punishing people who deserve it is pretty understandable. I think most people can relate to that, at least somewhat, right? But most people would say the punishment should fit the crime, all right? Like a kid going into a store and stealing some candy. Definitely not something he should be doing. But does that kid deserve to be tortured in the basement? No.
No.
We would generally say no, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the problem I have with the God of the Bible. It's not that he punishes, it's that the punishment is always so extreme. You know, I mean, hell is the punishment, right? The ultimate punishment. Ultimately, hell is where, you know, people like me are going to be, according to the Bible. And I'm going to be tormented forever and ever and ever and punished forever and ever and ever simply because I don't believe something. And that's to me not punishment fitting the crime. It's overblown. We don't give the death penalty to the child who was caught shoplifting. Right?
Yep. I like to think God said that he was provoked. So that was some provoking for him to do that. I don't think it was an isolated one person. I think it was it wasn't a whole. So it's a punishment of mankind, is what the Bible says. It's a punishment on all.
Well, let me ask you something, Flute. All right. And I'm asking you sincerely. All right. And I'd ask maybe you think for yourself. And I'm trusting you do think for yourself. All right. Somebody being punished with an eternal torment, if that's what you believe hell is. And a lot of people believe that is what hell is. All right. But somebody being punished eternally and forever, being tormented for doing something along the lines of, stealing a loaf of bread. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Does it make sense that all you got to do is confess to the Son?
No, not for
and
me.
you'll be forgiven?
For me,
and that you don't have to.
For me, none of that makes sense. And then that's why I'm not a Christian, right? All right. I'm just saying the Christian belief is that when somebody steals a loaf of bread, they deserve to be punished forever and ever and ever and ever.
Fair enough. But
and,
God is threatening what he will do. There's nowhere in the Bible of stories of anybody actually burning in hell.
No, there's not all that much written about hell. I get that. But I'm going by what most people who I talk to believe, right? They believe that hell is a place of punishment and it never ends.
And I think when a street preacher says you're going to go to hell, you're going to hellfire, you might, but it's to warn you that God did put that in place. Like, watch out.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you believe the book.
But I think he'll be fair in his judgment in the end. But testing him too much, he will go through with it. He'll put the hammer down. That's what I believe.
Well, I mean, the book says that he's going to deal harshly with people who disobey him. I mean, so when you believe the book, that's where you're at. Right?
Yeah.
I don't believe the book anymore. So, like, for me, that seems very strange. Like, I mean, the threat has to be so severe. It's like, it's like I had children. They're grown up now, but it's like, when my children were young, living in my house, all right, and I'm trying to teach them right from wrong, and I'm telling them, don't do this, and then they do it.
Would you would you threaten the maximum penalty, or would you threaten with the medium penalty for doing something wrong, or the minimum, or would you threaten with the maximum, which is eternal hell fire?
No, I would threaten them with the appropriate, what I deem appropriate, right? If you turn on the TV after you were told not to turn on the TV, you're going to suffer a consequence. The consequence may be, you won't be able to watch TV for a week. All right. That would be appropriate to me. All right. But if I were to say, well, you're not supposed to watch the TV, and if you do, I'm going to kill you and destroy you. No, that's just not right. It's cruel.
Yeah. What do you think about somebody yelling it out to somebody? Not a certain person, but to
I think that
You're going to
people,
hell.
again, people are free to express themselves. All right, they're freedom. It's free to give your thoughts, and that may very well be the thought of somebody, but that doesn't mean that people hearing that are going to accept it. Because they also have their own brains, right?
Hmm.
That's the problem with street preaching. Not that it's a problem. It's just, you go out there and you're telling people something, and that's fine. But you can't possibly expect everyone to believe everything you're telling them.
They don't like it when it comes from a person
No.
like that. Not when it comes from out of someone's mouth to them who they don't know. But you can't blame the preacher because he's saying God's word, and that's what we believe. That's true. We believe in it. We're in, but it's got me thinking. It's got me thinking.
Well, as long as you're thinking, I think that's a good thing. Because in my worldview, or my understanding of reality, is that thinking is very important. All right. And I try to maintain an open mind, not saying I could be easily persuaded, because I can't be easily persuaded. But I never want to come to a point where I feel I'm not persuadable at all. Right. Because, then
Yeah.
I'm just closed minded. Right.
Yeah.
So as long as you're thinking, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Let
for
me ask
talking.
you, I'm going to go to Extreme Bricks because I see them in the comments.
Yeah. Well,
Extreme.
I like to preach a lot, but I wanted to get the sort of that sort of common ground of what we actually both sort of believe. You're going to probably expect a lot of offense though. If I come back up, it's preaching. Like this is
I don't mind people.
You're a nice guy. You're a nice
Listen,
guy, and I'm in training to get better at this.
I don't mind people preaching, so you understand that, all right? But people preaching doesn't necessarily translate to now I believe what they believe. Okay. Because I maintain my independence and my own free thinking, and I maintain, casting judgment of my own, right? Right.
Yeah.
But I'm never concerned about people preaching. All right. Like I said, it means that people are, doing something with action. They're putting action behind what they believe. They're doing a lot more than a lot of people do, right? A lot of people won't even share what they believe, right? Especially when encountering, like you are sharing with someone who doesn't believe what you believe. So that already takes some courage, right?
Yeah.
So I admire courage. I admire things like that. I'm never gonna shut people's freedom of speech down.
Yeah. I think some people don't use it. Some people also, I'd say, haven't really used it enough. It's such a great privilege that we don't sort of exercise, even though we got nothing to exercise it about. It's a bloody good thing.
Yeah. I'm going to post this link in the chat again. I was hoping to speak to who is it here? It's Extreme Bricks.
Extreme
We'd
Bricks.
love to talk to you because Extreme Bricks has a lot of thoughts and opinions.
Okay, cool.
See if they could step in. It's hard for me to read all the chats because it's and I tell everyone that I come into this chat room with, I smoke a lot of pot. So, and I'm 62 years old. All right. So it gets difficult for me to communicate with multiple people or type and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I really do smoke a lot of pot. Not that I'm high now, by the way. I'm not. But, you know, I smoke a lot of marijuana. Extreme Bricks. You can come in that link so we can actually talk.
See, I don't like. I don't get- like. I don't mind people. I don't mind. You know, that's what people do. People do what they want to do. But at the same time, I think God's message needs to be preached. Like, no. Anyway, even though I'm like cool with people doing smoking pot, but I think that the rebuking on the street is very based.
Well, do you happen to think it's a sin for someone to smoke marijuana?
Yeah,
You think it's a sin?
yeah, I think it's a sin.
Like, what do you base that on?
Being sober minded.
So just intoxicated in general?
And I drink.
Yeah.
I also believe in someone yelling, "You're going to hell for drinking too much." At the same time, that's what I think needs to be the word out there.
So
That
the thing is,
God's gonna punish you.
the thing is, if there is a sin being intoxicated, whether you're drinking or whether you're smoking pot or whether you're doing LSD or any other drug out there, right? All right. If that's the sin, being not sober minded and not in
I
your
just don't
normal
believe in anyone forcing someone not to drink or smoke pot. Like, I'm against the enforcement of it. I like
Yeah.
it. I like those things being legal because I like to sometimes, and I like to drink. But I like it to be told that it's fucking bullshit.
The thing is, if it's a sin and it's wrong to be intoxicated with one of these substances, but it's okay to do it and not be intoxicated, like maybe drink a beer,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's not sin. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
drinking a beer, most
Jesus
people
drank
aren't going to
wine.
be intoxicated on that. All right.
Yeah.
But then it becomes very tricky because now we're talking about when is a person intoxicated, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a difficult thing to
It
judge.
doesn't talk about smoking weed, but it does say it alcohol was the only sort of drug at the time. Like, God's clearly saying, you know, you weren't made to smoke, and I smoked, but you're not made to smoke.
Yeah, I mean,
I smoke cigarettes. I smoke cigarettes, but I know it's.
The cigarettes is worse than the marijuana, I think.
Yeah, God will punish that. Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that cigarettes are more unhealthy than smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
You know,
I got no problem telling someone they're going to go to hell for smoking cigarettes.
And yet you do smoke?
Yeah.
So you don't think you're going to hell for that, do you?
I might.
But that's not a good thing. I would not send you to hell for smoking cigarettes. If I was God, Flute, I would not send you to hell for smoking cigarettes.
Well, he won't because I believe in the Son.
Well, yeah, I guess because you're saved from.
But I still deserve I deserve whatever's coming though. you know, I deserve the rebuke, but I can still rebuke too. Not him.
It always amazes me. Like I was thinking about this last night. All right, laying in bed with my girlfriend, and we were talking about this. It's like I was trying to explain some of Christianity to her, but because she's a Christian, so she believes in Jesus, all that. All right, but she's not like a radical Christian, so she's not really living it out to the extent that some people do. Right, and I was trying to explain to her, the wrath of God is a big part of Christianity. You know,
Yeah.
God, if God is
The-
mad at you, you're in a
Yeah.
lot of trouble, right?
Yeah.
It's no joke. It is
It's
serious stuff,
yeah.
And by accepting Jesus, right, you're pretty much throwing yourself at the mercy of God and at the mercy of Jesus. So if we go to a Catholic mass, we hear, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. It's a big part of the whole thing, because you're pleading with God to have mercy on you, a sinner, someone who deserves hell, deserves death, deserves punishment.
Yeah.
And you're pleading with this person, please don't do that, because I believe in your son, right? I believe in Jesus. And that pretty much sums up the gospel.
Yeah.
Now, as an atheist, that don't do it for me.
Yeah. No, it's pretty. It's definitely you. When it comes to the wrath of God, it's definitely you're like hell no or okay. It's because it's either. I mean, either I've I've never been put off by the flood killing people for some. Like I might be a bad person, but it's never actually put me off one bit. I must look at it a different lens. I I mean I do good things for people. Nice people. Never uh, since being a Christian last five years, never broken the law. Um, you know, but the wrath of God doesn't look bad to me. It looks like that's what he's doing.
Well, it certainly could be that he's very wrathful, right? It could be that. That's a possibility, right? And certainly, if you believe the Bible, that's something you're going to put a lot of emphasis on, right? But when you don't believe the Bible and you don't live according to the Bible, it doesn't carry any weight anymore, you know.
Mm.
Just don't believe it. So it's like, you wouldn't be concerned about the wrath of Allah, would you?
Don't get me started on the Muslims. Don't get me started on
Because
the Muslims.
I'm
I
asking
know the
because I doubt if
Allah's
you
terrible.
believe in that.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't believe in Allah. No, he's
So
no.
then you wouldn't be worried about the
No, I
wrath
want
of
to
Allah.
rebuke. I rebuke that. Yeah, yeah. Not no. The Dawa boy's bad.
Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
not. But I'm saying if you don't believe in that, you're not worried about it. All right.
Yes.
And that's the
Also,
thing.
because I've got the great equalizer, Jesus,
Well, he's your
the
sword, the
great
word of God.
equalizer. So he can't. Yeah, he equalizes that one really well.
Well, as an atheist, I'm not afraid of Allah. I'm not afraid of Jesus. I'm not afraid of God the Father. I'm not afraid of any of them. So, when you're preaching on the corner and I'm standing there, I'm not scared of, the God hurting me or sending me to hell simply because I don't believe it. If I believed it, it might make me scared, right? Oh my goodness, I got to watch what I'm doing, right? But it doesn't have any impact on those who do not believe, right?
Mm.
I mean, I'd be more worried about you hitting me, you know,
Yeah.
than I am about God sending me to hell. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Someone
for
like Tenebris, I'd preach against pretty hard.
in the chat, Tenebris,
Yeah, yeah, I'd go at him.
today or in the past?
No, I'd go at him next stream maybe if he wants to. But
Um,
I think you're pretty good with God.
I don't believe in him. If that's being good with him, yeah. I mean,
Well, you're good with the preaching because you know that. Yeah, you're good with you know what you know what you know.
yeah, I
You
don't.
know the
It
Bible.
doesn't bother me
You know the
because
Bible. So yeah,
I mean I've read the Bible,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
so
you
it's
know
not.
it well.
It's not. That's what's one
It's not
unusual thing
news.
as well. All right, because people who preach, all right, and people who are Christians and they're, want people to read the Bible, all right, it's like what they don't understand is that a lot of people have read the Bible, even if they're not Christians, because the Bible is available for anybody. You know, I could be
Yeah,
Muslim and read the Bible. I could be Jewish and read the Bible. I could be atheist and read the Bible.
yeah. I'm surprised how many people have actually read the Bible. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I'm surprised.
Well, I do think it's the most copied book out there. It's certainly available almost everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't think as many people had read it, but yeah, people have read it.
Yeah, it's available almost everywhere, except like in China, you'd have to smuggle them into the country because the government doesn't allow for it, you know.
Mm.
But people in China still want to read it because over there it's like forbidden. And we all know that we like to do naughty things. So if you're over there, it's like, oh, I'm going to go in my room and hide, but I'll read the Bible.
Yeah,
Because the government doesn't want the Bible there.
yeah. So I'll leave it. I got a question that's
Sure.
pretty sort of. It's pretty solid, I reckon. But so unity and peace. I don't think it works that well. Like the message of unity and peace doesn't actually work that well. So I'm saying the Bible's better solution. Unity and peace. I feel like people still walk past drug addicts, don't say anything, don't care. People walk past prostitutes, don't think anything. There's a lot of like, who gives a fuck
Mhm.
at the same time as being like, we're on this big peace unity campaign. And it's like, but everybody still can do whatever and just fucking, you know, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is complicated, very hard to fucking even work. That's why we've got people that want anarchy. There's anarchy, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. And it's like they're the same people that were talking about unity and peace, and now they've popped up. They want anarchy. So it's like there's a problem with the unity and peace, even though that's what we want. There's a problem with that working, and I think God's a better hammer for that. To sort of get everyone on the same page.
Well, I think that if everyone was on the same page, yeah, I mean that could work, right? The thing is, it's not really
They don't want to be
reality.
on the same. Don't want everyone on the same page. So
I mean, the idea, it's kind of like I don't know what the word would be. It's wishful thinking, you know, that everyone would be on the same page. But the more I've been alive, the more I don't think that's going to happen. You know?
yeah, it doesn't look like it looks like it can work. The theory, in theory, it's what we should believe in our hearts, and it's what we do and live. But it seems like it's it seems like it's even hard with God, and even it looks it's. I believe in the Bible, so I think that's the way to go on when it comes to unity and peace.
Well, I bet you when you're out street preaching, I bet you're going to get Christians who totally disagree with you as well. And Christians will divide with you. Like I've noticed on our conversation, all right, you've said some curse words. Okay.
And
Now,
I think, yeah, I think
I
it'd be
don't
worse on the
care.
street.
I don't care one bit. All right. But you're going to find some Christians who are going to be upset about that.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
If you say that during your street preaching, anyway. You know?
Yeah, I think I'd go against Catholics. I mean, we gotta follow the Bible. This is how we're gonna do it. If we're doing the Bible, then it's word for word.
What you should do, I mean, if you wanted to have fun with it, you should have a camera and go out street preaching and then make a video of it.
Definitely a safety video, but I'm definitely doing a safety video. I'm also not planning on doing it on my own. I'm planning on
Yeah,
bannering.
no, but you
I'm
should
I'm
have,
I'm gonna banner with a group,
yeah, but
and
you should bring a camera person
one
with
guy
you.
will do the speaking.
Yeah, just one
I'm just
person
gonna be.
videotaping.
Oh, right. You're saying I could. Yeah. That's a good idea too. Yeah.
Then you
Yep.
could look back on it later.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to do it for a day. I've got to test that out. It might not be for me, but I got to test that. I got to experience that.
Yeah.
Rebuke of people. I got to experience that, and for my own belief of God, I feel like I've got to go out there and tell some people, and really, really really give it to them.
Hey, I hope it goes well for you. I will say I don't think that you're going to have all these people running up and saying, "Yeah, now we're saved." But who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, I know when I used to do it a long time ago, I didn't have a bunch of people running up and saying, "Well, now I'm saved."
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me
So you
see.
did. You get a lot of wave. You get a lot of little sort of waves going past, though, right? A lot of people sort of agreeing.
I When I did it, I had both. I had people agreeing
You
and
know what I
people
mean? Like, yeah,
disagreeing. But
not the full, but
it
the
was something that did draw out emotions in people, you know, and had agreement and disagreement, non-violent but heated discussions, you know. And I
right,
never had anyone run up and say, "Well, now I'm saved," because the people who were agreeing already thought they were saved. So
right, right, right. That makes sense. It makes sense. Like, it's something that they probably want to see in the first place.
yeah, they were just happy that someone was out there giving their,
Yeah,
you know, their
that
opinion.
makes sense.
But
Yeah,
yeah, and then I never had like a conversion happen, you know.
really. Yeah.
No, but I didn't do it for that long. I've done it like I said, by memory, I'm thinking 4 times maybe. You know.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, discussion. I see you out there. Why don't you pop in? I would love to talk to you. I posted the link. So discussion is another non-believer. So mostly I talk to believers, but I know he's not a believer. Scott is popping in.
And
Hey,
those 4 times, did you enjoy that?
Hey, how's it going, Lou? This is the Scott from the discussion. How's it going?
oh, so you are the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you going?
All right. Yeah, I didn't know your real name, but nice
Yeah,
to
that's
see
right.
you.
Let
Yep.
me nice to see you too. Let me close this tab so it don't echo. There we go. All right, how's it going, Lou?
Hey, I'm trying to do these lives. I love interacting with people.
Yeah,
For the most part,
absolutely.
I get mostly Christians
Yeah,
who pop in, and I'm cool with that. You know,
right.
but it's I'm trying to make my little thing open to anybody.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I wanted to, pop in and show you some love and support the channel. Of course, we love discussions, so
Yes.
I love the conversation and just the openness. And for me, I just like the idea of taking sensitive topics and broaching these topics in a very calm, cordial way, if you will, because these days, as you know, there's so much echo chambers. There's so much division on so many fronts: politics, religion, which is forever and ever. It didn't just start yesterday. But yeah, it's about time that we start having these discussions and trying to come up with a way to have really high quality conversations or high quality perspectives, and knowing the difference between a low quality perspective and a high quality perspective, and being able to talk about it openly, and figure it
Yep.
out.
That's kind of the same vision I have for what I'm doing. Right? I'm a very opinionated person, and most people I talk to are very opinionated. But you can be opinionated and still have some sort of an open mind, right? And it doesn't have to be extreme where you dislike someone because they don't think like you do.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a really big tendency in our culture to be triggered very easily, or to be offended, or to take people the wrong way. There's a lot of baggage that comes with a lot of key terms and a lot of even subjects as a whole. People get on the defensive and have a hard time, bridging some kind of understanding. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I'd love, I would love to just talk to people um, about the things I believe, not to necessarily convince them or change their mind necessarily, but just to build some kind of understanding. I know I've learned a lot from other people. I've come to change my beliefs over the years because I've opened myself up to conversating and trying to understand another person. And usually when a person doesn't have an agenda like to change my mind, usually I may just let it influence me. If I find it makes sense, if something about it, resonates with me, then, I'll accept it, or I'll keep it under consideration, or I might even, come to really embrace the ideas, until different contrary evidence comes along to kind of sway me differently, so to speak.
Yeah, and like politics, extremely divisive.
Yes.
Right? In America today, it's very divisive. Right? Religion, very divisive. I mean, it doesn't have to be though, and that's the key. I mean, you could be friends with a religious person who just is totally different than you in what they believe. All
Hmm.
right. I mean, that's how I grew up when I was young, and I don't see much of it anymore, but it was kind of cool.
Hmm.
I think I recall you were at one time Jehovah Witness, right?
That's right.
Well, at one time, when I was young, my best friend growing up was Jehovah Witness,
Hmm.
right? I wasn't, right? And yet we were best friends.
Hmm.
So, it was a nice thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad thing, all right? And that's kind of like I don't see all that much of that anymore,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
And when it comes to politics, I think that really we're talking about values. People have different values, and some people value certain things for different reasons. Say, like, the abortion idea. Some people value body autonomy over um, the death of a fetus, for example. Or some
Yeah,
people simply value the death of a fetus over body autonomy and vice
yeah,
versa. And it's really hard. Oftentimes we get into these little side issues on the same topic, and we're not really discussing the root value that we're talking about. And it makes it kind of a distraction, or it makes it kind of hard to really have a conversation because we've all got a different foundation from where we're coming from. If you're, for example, if you're arguing with Christian, and you're an atheist, and he keeps, presenting you Bible scriptures as his evidence or reason why you should believe what he's saying, well, it's going to do very little for you if you don't really believe in the Bible as having the authority that he assumes it does, because you guys are basing your conversation off totally different foundations altogether. And so, really, what would it do for the atheist to respond with, "Oh, well, that scripture is stupid," or "That scripture, I don't believe in it," or something like that? You have to kind of get down to, why should I believe the scripture has any authority? And let's get a common ground first. So it gets very fundamental. It may even go beyond that. You may be one of these folks that don't believe in any sort of God whatsoever. So even if you could show the Bible's authentic or whatever the guy wants to say, well, I don't believe it comes from a God because I don't believe in a God. So now you've kind of reduced the problem down even further. And I kind of feel like that's what needs to happen with those kind of huge, big topics. You have to really reduce it down to what we mean, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
oh
stuff
yeah.
like abortion.
I think a lot of
Hmm.
times people are talking over each other, you know,
Yeah.
not even attempting to understand what the other person is trying to say, you know.
Yeah.
And I try not to do that. Okay, I try to actually hear each person on what they're actually at least trying to communicate. Um, before I even respond, I want to feel I understand what they're saying. But
Right.
sometimes you got to ask questions, and then people can be offended over that. You know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to ask a question because I'm trying to clarify. I went on someone's live a few hours ago, and I asked just a question, not to be offensive. just I wanted to clarify so that I could understand what he was communicating. And it seemed like he got really upset. Like, why are you challenging me? I'm like,
Mm.
that wasn't my intentions. It's just I'm really trying to understand what it is you're trying to say.
Right, and that goes to, for me, like I have a standard. Everybody has a standard, and like a low value perspective or a low value opinion
Yeah, what
can
about
be.
God's standard?
Yeah, well, what I mean is, if in a in an epistemic sense, like if you have if you can't really be asked questions, or you can't really, if your belief can't be challenged, for me that's sort of a low standard
Yeah.
perspective, because a high standard perspective is going to be able to stand the rigor of any question, because it stands on its own truth, right, or its own validity. But if you don't have any sort of high standard, then the last thing you want is to be questioned, or the last thing you want is to be challenged in any kind of way, because then because the perspective is sort of insecure. It requires belief only. It doesn't
Yes.
require any sort of logic or any other framework that you want to present. It's just it's an insecure sort of foundation, and so it's hard to speak to people that have these low bar standards for belief.
Yes. And I totally want to be on YouTube and doing this channel. I totally want to be transparent and not um I'm not, scared to have dialogue with anybody. Like, it's just not even a thing. I'm comfortable with who I am. I have opinions, but it doesn't bother me that people disagree,
Right.
because people always are going to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to happen, right? It's just the reality of living. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But yeah, if person is so insecure that it's like, I'm an atheist. So if I'm so insecure in my lack of belief that someone's going to say something about what they believe and it's going to get me all upset, I
Yes.
don't think I'm very secure in my atheism, right?
Right. 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 And that sort of red flag for me is this overconfidence that people have for such beliefs like that, because you know it's okay to have a high confidence level. I mean, it's okay to be anything, to think any way you want. But I mean, it's sort of a red flag for me, or I get really suspicious when people are way too confident about their claims. Like even me, in anything that I believe or talk about, I always like to buffer it with, I have a high confidence, but I'm never 100%, because whenever I'm 100%, it means that I'm closed-minded about it. I'm not,
And
and I don't want
Scott,
to
you
be
and
that
I are
guy.
right here. That's how I feel.
Right,
All
right,
right,
and
we see that thing the same. All right, I I'm comfortable with my beliefs and lack of beliefs. All right, and I'm secure. I don't feel insecure. All right, but I don't feel that I can never learn anything. And to me, if I feel that, then my mind is truly shut. you
right,
know,
and I think
I
it. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Flute. I'm sorry. Go right ahead, sir.
I am not insecure about my God though, and my Gospels. Some people are insecure about the Gospels,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a
about
lot
their
of
God,
people.
who their God is. Some
Yeah,
people are ashamed of their God.
Yes.
absolutely, and that's not a good thing. It's like that's pretty bad, right? it's like it's certainly not a good testimony, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good testimony if it's a Christian or a different religion and they're insecure in what they believe, where an atheist like myself is going to totally destroy their whole world.
Yeah. I would hate to do that. Like, I just hate being that guy that's the contrarian. On the other hand, like, and I always, whenever I start talking about these big topics, which is very rare, will I start asking a person about their, deep seated beliefs, because most people, it's private, or they have these issues with it. Maybe they're doxastically closed about it. So I'll just ask for permission. Do you permit me to really ask you about this? Is this something you'd like to talk about? Like, would you like a little pushback or some maybe internal critiques or whatever, however we want to go at it? And usually I'll ask epistemic sort of questions, like not to really challenge them directly, but maybe to say, what method did you use to arrive at such a high confidence about this belief? And just kind of examine the method first. And then we can see if the method was really effective or if it works, and we can kind of test it out and say, like for example, if a Christian says, well, I know my beliefs are true because when I pray, this thing happens, I get this feeling, or this thing, this vision happens, or these really strong, impressions are made, and this is enough for me to believe. And I'll say, okay, well, you're maybe a Muslim, for example, that tells me that. I could ask them, well, suppose a Christian was to say, I was to ask them the same thing, and a Christian was to say, well, give me the same exact answer. Could they be wrong about that? And if they say, well, he's got to be wrong about that because my religion's the true religion. Say, well, if he can be wrong about his answer, then me as an outsider, how can I know that you're right about yours? Because you're both using the same reasoning. So how can we determine who's right and who's wrong? And just get them to kind of talk about their method, just kind of dig deeper and deeper and kind of, reduce it down to what's really the motivation. Because I guarantee you, most of the time, people are usually motivated through culture, the way they were raised, maybe some other factors, maybe some, other factors that are really kind of separate from my mental state or my experience or what I understand about the world. And so then we can kind of start building a bridge, like how can we understand each other, But
Yeah.
these sort of epistemic questions I find are kind of helpful.
Hey, if anyone in the chat, please go to Scott's YouTube. Right, he has good discussions there, and as he probably could tell, he's a pretty nice guy.
Is Scott an atheist?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I
just first,
really
guys. I got to go. I just yeah, good man, Scott.
okay, yeah.
Lou, thanks for letting us come up.
Hey,
Tenebris,
thanks for joining me today.
yeah, thank you very much, mate. You're a good man. Tenebris, a circle is round. A circle is not flat. Wrong.
Well, circles are round and flat, so. But he's gone now, so.
He'll get it on the review.
Yeah, circles are two-dimensional objects, so technically they're flat, but they're round. They're round. Well, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, you asked me a really good question about the atheism because I guess it depends on what you mean by atheism. Like the more philosophical definition, and I have a lot of interactions sometimes on debates because I also do debates, and what I do is I debate for Christianity, I debate for atheism, I debate for theism. I like to steel man positions. So one of the things that happens is that it all boils down to definitions. Like usually atheism in the more popular sense is more like agnostic unbeliever. An agnostic meaning you don't really know there's a God, therefore you don't believe in God. So that's more of a general atheism, but then you've got these other Christians that'll kind of pigeonhole you and say, oh, you're not an atheist, you're something else, because atheism is actually the denial. It's actually, in philosophical definitions, atheism is more harder than that. It's to say there is no God. It's a positive claim. Yeah. There is no God. So you have to be really careful when you define yourself. But I would say that I'm kind of agnostic because, number one, I don't know what a God is. I'm not really sure what that means. No one's really spelled it
Well,
out.
let's try to define it then. So I would define God as an intelligent, willful, intentional being that is the source of reality and
Hmm.
the universe and life.
Okay. And how how did you arrive at that belief, if I might ask?
Well, it's not that I believe it. I'm just saying that would be a basic definition of God. Like
Oh, I see.
it is
Yeah,
an intelligent being, so it's conscious, it's aware, it has a will, and it's the source of all creation essentially.
I see. I see. So I could be wrong about that, but I don't really believe that that really makes coherent sense on my view. Um, the reason why is because the way that I look at, we're talking about a huge universal claim, right? We're talking about creation, the universe. Well, let me ask you this though. Would you say that this God is usually defined as perfect, like complete, in need of nothing?
Yeah, so it would probably have like some of the omni properties, but yeah, I would say this God is perfect in the sense of at the very least it's all knowing,
Hmm.
so it knows everything, and all powerful, omnipotent is kind of a tricky one because there are limitations on any conceptualization of God.
Hmm.
Like God can't stop being God. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
God can't be God and not God at the same time.
So maximally great, you would say.
Yeah, so maximally great and omnibenevolent. Uh, I don't think that God necessarily needs to be omnibenevolent, but you know, we'll throw it in there because they
Right.
usually do.
So my
Now,
issues usually come back to the same two problems, and that it would be the problem of evil and the problem of omniscience for two. But then also, if God is perfect, then he's in need of nothing. He wants nothing. He would need nothing, and so um, I'm not sure why God would be willful to create anything. Like I can go along with a God that sort of like a naturalistic kind of God, like a God that just is will without being the consciousness part, like just being sort of an unconscious will, kind of like a computer program or some kind of quantum fluctuation type of thing, something that just happens and actuates itself and then everything sort of emerges from that, infinite being, so to speak. I can get with that because it doesn't really strain my credulity and it doesn't really cause me the problem of evil or the hiddenness problem or all of these things that kind of entail in a personal God. The personal God is a problem because we obviously know there's evil in the world. I mean, when I say evil, I mean like, you know, um,
Bad things happen to good people.
yeah, unnecessary evil. And maybe it's necessary, but it's beyond my scope to know if it is or not. And in that case, I have to reserve judgment. So, in that case, I would just say I'm not convinced that the problem of evil can be solved by a personal, willful God, because this God is, like you said, he's the omni God or the maximally great God. And so those things challenge my credulity.
hey, I want to say two things. Scott, one thing that I was, kind of blown away by is you said you debate both sides of an issue,
Hmm.
right? You could take either side in a debate.
Hmm.
And I think that's something people should understand because, like, I'm watching in the, on the online world, this whole thing about Billy Carson and Wes Huff.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like I'm watching, Christians are, all excited, this
Yeah.
guy beat this other guy in a debate. All right. But I don't even think winning a debate proves all that much.
No, no, it's
because
no.
you can win a debate and not even believe in what your kind of debating, right? Because
Yes.
you have a certain skill level, right? And you're just good at it, right?
Right.
So I find it fascinating that it's like this big deal that one guy beat another guy in a debate. It's like this guy Billy Carson. It seems like his whole career is ruined, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
lost the debate. Now I'm nothing, right?
Right now, my career is over, and this
And
other
Wes
guy's
Huff
just
seems to be the golden,
the
the
golden
golden
child.
child
Yeah.
now. He's
He
the guy
is.
who won the debate.
Yeah, he won. He's a winner, and it really did nothing to move the needle for people's commitments. One way or the other, because people don't come to these sort of beliefs based on those sort of arguments. I mean, if I go to a church down the street and talk to the old lady, she doesn't care about the moral argument or whether Isaiah's 100% accurate to the modern translations versus the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, they don't care about these sort of facts and factoids and arguments or philosophical arguments, because they don't think about these things too deeply. These people, for the most part, and it's not to shame them or criticize them, it's just human nature. They come to believe these things for different reasons, and they may even tell you that. They'll say, well, look, I believe it because it makes me feel good. I know it doesn't make sense and it doesn't have to. So get off my back. And it's like, that's fine. That's cool. You can do what you want. I
I'm
don't have a
totally
problem.
cool with people and what they believe.
Right.
Right? I don't have any problem with what people believe. My issues come into play when it's like forcing other people to believe what you do, or legislating in a political sense what you believe. All right,
Right.
But that's
that's
what
where to
everyone
me it
does.
gets, you know.
There's nothing else you can do except legislate what you believe.
Yeah, those are the
Well,
values and
I
stuff.
I
That you've
I'm
got
an
a point.
atheist, right? I'm an atheist. I don't want the country to push atheism.
Right.
Like that's
Why
not even
not?
in my.
Why not?
I
If
just
atheism
it
is
doesn't
true, then
matter.
why shouldn't people believe it?
Doesn't matter to me. You
Well,
know,
I think that's part of the problem with your worldview is that there's no. Well, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna assume I know what you're thinking, but to me, the problem with that is if there's an ultimate good to which we're pursuing as a society, this idea of pluralism or multiculturalism, it doesn't work because some ideas and ways of running society and operating society are better than others for human flourishing. So saying you don't care what people believe is just to say, well, okay, if people get in there who believe things that are going to destroy society, well, that's just what it's kind of like
no,
I
no,
understand.
it's not as black and white in the way I think. All right. Obviously, it concerns me if people are doing something that harms other people. All right. And I'm into freedom a lot. Like it goes a long way with me. All right. So if someone is going to take my freedoms away, all right, yeah, I'm really concerned about that. That really bothers me. But what people believe about a god or not a god or which god, that just doesn't register as a big deal to me. Right?
What if their God is they are convinced their God is telling them to chop the heads off non-believers? Would that be
Yes.
something? Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, so we have to look at what people believe, and if it's untrue, then I think that
Well,
it's ultimately good to
I
confront it,
think I
challenge them.
look at it more like that's dangerous, and that is dangerous. Okay. So there are beliefs that can become dangerous, and that's where I'm concerned about it. I'm not concerned with, you know, I mean, just to illustrate my point, I'm not concerned with the old lady sitting in her house, believing in Allah when Allah may not be true. All right, that doesn't bother me. All right. If the old lady's sitting in her house and she tells her son to go out and kill me because she believes in Allah, then it's going past belief. It's going into actions that are going to harm me. Right.
So what you're saying, Lou, is that your real belief, the real root of your belief, has to do with freedom rather than any particular religious belief or religious non-belief. I think there's like a hierarchy here, and I think that the one at the top is going to be your freedom to believe or not believe. That's the belief you want pushed.
Oh, that's a big value of mine.
Right. That's the
You're free
value.
to believe or not to believe.
Right.
All right, that would be something I value a lot. Freedom of expression, I value. You know, freedom of thought, I value. All right, don't take that away from other people. All right, that would be where I draw the line. You know, I mean, if I'm an atheist and I want to go and kill Christians, well, that's completely out of line.
Right.
Completely out of line. Right.
Right. Like a more libertarian sort of view. Like everyone has a right to do what they want up until they violate my right to do the same. Kind of like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can swing your arm around all you want, just don't hit me in the nose.
Yeah. That's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah,
You
I'm the
know,
same
I
way.
don't care that the old lady, like I'm an atheist. I don't care that the old lady prays to God and finds peace there. Right. You know, I don't care that the child is being taught by the mother how to pray to God and that's working for them.
Right.
Right. That doesn't bother me at all. All right. If the mother was trying to take my rights away or take the rights of other people away to not believe like they
Right.
do,
Right.
then I'm concerned about that.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's pretty much explains it.
I,
And
I well, go ahead.
A's philosophy. I know the other day I missed you, right? So I'm glad
Yeah.
you were able to make it in. So
Well, you didn't
anything,
miss me. What happened was you actually did bring me on for a couple minutes, but I had to tend to some pressing matter, and unfortunately, we weren't able to have a conversation. But
yes, yes,
I'm
and
glad to
that's
be
what
here
I'm
now.
saying. I'm glad you're here, and anything you want to say, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I was gonna try to present to you an argument that I believe is convincingly shows that God existing is much more probable than God not existing. But it takes a little while to lay out, and I don't know if we're kind of having a dialogue right now, so I'd have to like get like 5 minutes to build my case,
Well,
and
can I ask you, is it a common argument or is it something,
it,
unique?
well, it's an argument. I didn't come up with the argument. It's people who I think that a lot of people are aware of the argument, but maybe not everybody. I don't know. That's the best way I can put it.
Because this is what I'll tell you. I'm familiar with a lot of arguments for God. I don't think I'm familiar with all of them, but I do think I'm familiar with a lot of them. So if it's like a standard argument for God that's very common, I probably can tell you what I think about it without even hearing it because I may have heard it before.
Well,
Um,
let me give you a brief, like, abstract of the argument and kind of the idea behind it. Basically, it's an argument from mathematical probability.
yes,
There
just
are,
encountered that. I encountered something like that recently for the first time. But
yeah, well, you were having a conversation with a guy about that, but he was
that's the only time I encountered that.
okay. So he was giving you what's called the fine tuning argument. And that is not the fine tuning argument is the idea that the universal constants that are found in physics and basically scientific equations about how the forces of the universe work are basically so fine tuned that to a certain degree that permits life, that it's incredibly unlikely that they would just randomly be what they are unless a god designed them for life to exist. So I have studied physics and basically the sciences at a university level. So someone like me easily understood the argument and like the numbers behind it. But it would take some explaining for the average Joe to understand like why the argument is valid and kind of is convincing. But that wasn't even the argument that I was going to try to present. It was more it was a little bit different. It's the same concept, which is that basically when we observe certain things in the physical universe, there's an idea called the design inference. Is it more likely that something is designed, and I know that word is loaded with meaning, which we can define later, or is it more likely the result of mindless natural forces? And how can we even come about to determine that? Well, one of the ways is probability. Can we find out how probabilistically how probable it is that something happened in time if it was designed versus not designed? Okay, and one of the things we can look at is living beings, living organisms. We can actually calculate how probable it is that life would have arisen on Earth without without intelligent input. We can ask ourselves, like, what is the probability that life as we observe it today could exist if God didn't exist? So that's, and when you do crunch the numbers, essentially what you come out with, it is beyond impossible mathematically that even if you assume the Earth is trillions of years old, and yes, I did say trillions with a T.
Right.
It is completely impossible for the forces of nature to have created life as we observe it without some sort of intelligent guidance. And I can explain to you why people are saying that. Basically, it has to do with the idea of evolution and genetic mutations. So we have been able to determine how frequently genetic mutations arise in various organisms that exist. It's called the inherited mutation rate. Basically, for evolution to work, you have a parent organism, and then it transfers its genes to the next generation, right? When it has an offspring, an individual offspring, that is an opportunity for a genetic mutation, and it is also an opportunity for a genetic mutation to be fixed in a population. Genetic mutations cannot occur without reproduction, right? So the idea is we look at the current fixation rate of genetic mutations in living organisms. We make an assumption about how it would have operated, before humans arrived with bacteria and all that. And we ask ourselves, how many opportunities are there for genetic mutations to arise to create new novel organisms and proteins and things like that? Now, there are books that have been written about explaining all the numbers and where the numbers come from, and it's not based on the Bible. Nothing I'm saying is based on the Bible or anything in the Bible. It's all based on scientific observations. What they have found, what these scientists who are favorable to what's called intelligent design have found, is that if the current genetic mutation rate is basically assumed to go backwards, that the universe, the Earth itself, would have to be trillions upon trillions upon trillions of years old to generate enough genetic mutations to create the biodiversity we have today. So what they're saying is that the probability that mutation, selection, evolution could have created life is so incredibly unlikely, given what we know about how things mutate and how fast these mutations increase. There is no way it could have happened without some sort of intelligent input. That's the basis of the argument.
Okay, now I'm getting the gist of it. Okay. I say that because there are some arguments that just fly over my head, but I'm trying to understand, and I could understand at least a lot of what you were saying, right? Probably not everything, right? But I could understand some of it. All right. Now, a couple of questions I would have to clarify, right? You were talking about the Earth having to be so many, years old, billions or trillions of years old, right? What about the universe itself? Right? Is it if the universe was completely infinite, which I'm not saying I know that because I don't, but if it was infinite, the odds are more likely, right? Because it's
Yeah.
given more time and more time and more time and more time, right?
Right. If the
I
universe
don't
is
know what the odds are going to be.
hmm.
I have no idea, but the odds get greater with like the length of time.
I've got
the
another perspective on that, if you will, and you might find this interesting, A's. Um, are you familiar with Michael Levin?
Michael Levin. Uh, I can't say right now the name is ringing a bell.
Okay. So Michael Levin is sort of an agnostic. I don't know how he defines it. I don't know if he's a total atheist. I'm not sure. I know that he's not a theist necessarily. He's been pretty. I guess that'd make him an atheist, right? But he's been pretty specific about that. But so he's got experiments, and they've been sort of verified, and they kind of go along with what you were just pointing out, that there seems to be some sort of intelligence within, at least in biology, right? So when we look at like the cell, so like his whole standpoint, and I'm not telling you to believe this or whatever, I'm just going to give you another perspective. All intelligence is collective intelligence. This means that intelligence arises from like the coordinated actions of, say, multiple parts within a system, rather than just residing solely in a single entity like a brain or a neuron or anything like that. Individual cells within an organism can be considered intelligent under a certain definition, because what they do is they contribute to the overall goal of the system. So this makes intelligence sort of like a multi-scale phenomenon across different levels of biological organizations. So like intelligence is not really limited to humans or complex animals, but you can actually observe this in simpler organisms like single-celled creatures as well. So intelligence, the way that I think he's defining it, is the ability to achieve goals through various different novel means. And so we can actually see this through experiments in like simple systems other than human and animal brains. So the version of intelligence that these biologists like Michael Levin defines is sort of like that of William James. I don't know if you're familiar with William James, but he sort of defined intelligence as a fixed goal with variable means of achieving it. So he believed that intelligence tests would like rely on recalling facts, having a large vocabulary, following abstract rules, forming patterns. And this definition definitely meets the observations of what cells do. So you can look all this stuff up, like I did an entire debate, I think, yesterday with a guy for hours, and he was trying to refute me, but he had absolutely no counterfactuals to bring to the table. I brought out like 20 research papers on cell intelligence. And it's actually a term. It's actually a biological term, cellular intelligence. So we know that that the evolution of like the human body, animals, different organisms is intelligently guided, but not necessarily guided by a god, right? Not necessarily like this, ultimate mind behind it. It's not, the science really doesn't say that. It can't. It can only measure so far. So this may explain some of this stuff you're talking about, unless you're sort of pointing to intelligence like within the cosmos, like in some cosmic level.
Yeah, those are some really interesting points, and it strikes some of the. I've had a conversation with an atheist on a popular atheist call-in show recently, and she asked me name an instance where intelligence observed without a brain. Okay,
Hmm.
and I said, well, scientists can in any lab you can take single-celled organisms. And scientists are saying that they don't have a brain because they're single-celled organisms.
They don't even have a nervous system,
They don't have a
like
nervous
slime
system,
mold. Yeah.
right? But they are clearly what appears to be, they are clearly making decisions at some level, because they're going this way or that way. They're searching around. Some of these single-celled organisms can solve a maze, believe it or
Yes,
not.
exactly. Slime
So
mold.
right. So they don't have a brain, but they're thinking. So how does
Right.
this happen? So yeah, there is truth to what you're saying.
Yeah, it's called bioelectricity. It runs through all biological organisms, and it's basically 0 point energy principle. So it's basically kind of like the course of least resistance. So in nature, it will always find the course for least resistance, whether that's through quantum tunneling and we see this in like DNA transmission, we see this in photosynthesis. Energy finds a way to survive and replicate itself and solve problems. And this is from bioelectricity, and it will harness like quantum phenomenon that we're all well aware of, right? Like at this point, we're pretty aware, maybe not the layperson, but most researchers in these fields are pretty much aware of that. So, the common argument maybe a Christian, would make would be, well, who's generating the mind in this bioelectricity? You're just reducing it down with this sort of materialistic sort of um, framing. You're trying to like take God out of the equation by pointing to more nature, more nature, more nature. But where does this intelligence root itself in? Because evolution itself is an intelligent process from everything I've been telling you. And so now we're getting into what we're calling metaphysics, because science doesn't say anything about ontology or metaphysics. It simply goes out there and describes behavior. Science isn't in the business of telling you, like the hard problem of consciousness. This is a real debated thing in neurology and science, period, right? Nobody can really talk about why do we have, what neurons really control the flavor of garlic or the sight of red or the sight of blue. Like there's an explanatory gap there, right? And we can fill that gap with God. That's one way you can do it. Or you can just say, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Or you can totally change the paradigm totally on its head and come up with a more robust, more parsimonious sort of view, which is a more non-dualistic, more monist view of reality, to say that really at the heart of reality is some sort of mind itself, like not necessarily a God that entails, all the omni properties or any of the wills, personal God or anything like that, but something like a field that would sort of modulate itself with consciousness. That's one offer that's on the table, right? Then you've got these panpsychist folks that'll talk about, there's consciousness within every little photon, because hey, look, it is aware of other photons and other materials out in the universe, and so it sort of reacts. And so that's kind of like maybe level one of consciousness. And as it gets more complicated, consciousness sort of starts to develop, and then it gets to the point of biology, and it just gets more and more complicated. So you've got this composition division sort of explanation, which is actually a fallacy, but they'll use that sort of explanation to kind of build the bridge there too. For me, I lean more towards that idealistic view, that non-dualistic view, because it seems to make more sense to me, and that's just me though.
A's philosophy. I want to ask you this,
Yeah.
and that was incredible, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about. But what you got?
Yeah.
What you got, Lou?
All right, I'm far simpler than that, but I will say, Dave, when I did say, you're making some assumptions there about trillions of years. But the way I understand it now, there are people who think the universe is infinite. So if it is, and I don't know, but if they're on the right track, then those odds come down, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a number of things to be said about that. First of all, there is a view in physics called the steady state universe, which is the idea that essentially the universe, the physical universe, is infinitely old, eternally old, however you want to put it. That is not the consensus right now in science. The current consensus is what's called and I'm sure you've heard of this, so this is really nothing new, the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
And so most scientists, but not all, but most, believe that the universe began its expansion from a singularity about 14 to 15 billion years ago. Now, in my opinion, they don't know that because I am a steady state universe proponent myself. And you are correct that the older the universe is, the more likely it is that these things could have come about by sheer chance. So there's no doubt about that. One more problem you have, though, is it's not just the age of the universe. See, life on Earth could only have formed on Earth. And there are people who disagree with that, but we'll ignore that for now. But the bottom line is it really comes down to how old the Earth is, because very few models have the origin of life or the evolution of life beyond the Earth. And the current estimated age of the Earth is about 4 billion years. So neither of those time frames gives enough room to work with for the numbers I'm talking about.
But I think you may agree, and I'm going to ask you, um, as far as like the universe, right? Putting the Earth aside for a moment, right? There's so much we don't know about the universe, right?
Right. Oh yeah, yeah.
We're speculating and thinking, coming up with different ideas about it. Some may be stronger than others, but there's so much there that we do not understand yet. All right.
Absolutely.
And the thing with a god, I accept a god as being one of probably many possibilities. So I'm not saying that that's impossible. I mean, there
Yeah.
could be a god. I'm not a, I guess you would call it a hard atheist.
An anti-theist.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just someone who doesn't believe things very easily.
Yeah.
Well, one of the problems too with the framing of a lot of these metaphysical questions is sort of some of the assumptions that go into this whole conversation, right? Like we're all, when you're talking about, the age of the universe, time, you're looking at matter, you're looking at evolution, things that we actually see in front of us, right? But the thing about it that a lot of people don't really keep in mind is that, material has no real standalone existence. It all really reduces to numbers and coordinates, right? But those things are just descriptions. It's real easy to sort of mistake the map for the territory. And so this is the problem when people start, maybe throwing those assumptions in and then sort of drawing conclusions one way or the other, is that you're taking these concepts or abstractions. Materialism is a kind of abstraction, and you're saying, the one thing we know is our conscious, I think, therefore I am, right? Like that's our primary interface to the world, is that I'm conscious. And then everything I'm conscious of, like material things or physical things, I'll use those terms kind of interchangeably. Those things appear, they're appearances within consciousness. And these things sort of have like an objective value. So there's sort of an external world is the impression we have, and we all share it, right? We can all look at the red car going down the street and agree that there's a red car going down the street. You definitely wouldn't want to get in front of the red car because you get run over. You definitely want to take that chance. But at the same time, though, there's different ways to look at that. If we can just first of all understand that the material world, what we call time and space and matter, these things are sort of, first of all, appearances within our consciousness, first of all. And then even when you use materialism or you base use the maybe methodological physicalism or materialism, at the 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, material stops being material. time stops being time. We get into this realm called the quantum realm. And then all of these, when we talk about causation and we talk about things, those sort of concepts become kind of useless to the scientists at that point. Now we're kind of down into the world of probability distributions and numbers and things like that. And of course, those are abstractions, right? And so it's really hard to talk about a metaphysic of physicality in any sort of fundamental way. Like all of that stuff you guys are talking about makes a lot of sense on one level. But if we're really trying to get down to the metaphysics, like the fundamental of reality, then we have to kind of get clear on our substrate. What substrates are we talking about here?
I guess for me, this is where I go above.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Don't know,
Right.
right? A lot of people.
And I'm
right.
really comfortable with that. All right.
Yes.
I'm comfortable for myself with that. I don't have a problem saying I don't know. All right.
I appreciate that, and I feel like it's a healthy thing to do, but at the same time, are there ways to know? And I think, or at least, are there ways to be more certain of one versus the other?
Yes,
I
I'm
think
glad
that's
you asked
what-
that. Yeah,
That's what we're all seeking. All right.
that's what we're seeking. Yeah.
And there are some people that just don't have the cognitive ability to even go there. All right.
Yeah.
Because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm a high school educated guy.
So there's two
for
sides.
me,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's beyond me. That's what happened with the math guy. I
Well,
was trying-
after Scott
trying to
speaks,
explain, it's beyond me. I don't know what you're talking about.
I gotta leave in about 10 minutes. But before I leave, I kind of just want to land the plane about the probability. I know I've spoken at length about the probability. I just want to I don't want to go through it the entire thing because that would take way too much time. But I do kind of want to prime you a little bit and give you a little like appetizer, and just so you can mull over it, after the conversation is over.
hmm
But Scott said he wanted to say something, so I'll wait and then and go after that.
I was just gonna say one of the, Lou had said something here. He said like, what can we? How do we know we don't know? And then you had said, well, is there a way to really increase our confidence or maybe our belief? Maybe can lean one way or the other. And one thing I was thinking about was the principle of parsimony. The idea, Occam's razor. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term,
I know.
but it's kind of like making the less assumptions to theorize about these things. Like how, like for God, it seems like you have to sort of make this infinite amount of assumptions because this God is infinite himself. He's got all these properties that you can't really know. You just kind of assume. So you've got these assumptions going in. Same thing with the multiverse. Like, it's a hypothesis, and entailed in that hypothesis is that there's infinite amount of universes that explain these things, right? That's where our universe comes from, is from this multiverse. But what you're doing is you're assuming an infinite amount of universes that you can't even test for ever in principle. And so if you value parsimony, it seems like those sort of explanations get thrown out of the window for me. And it seems like if we can just build on the things we know, like we know that there's an external world. So there's also a subjective world. So there's two sides of the same coin of reality. Like there's the objective and the subjective. So if the objective world we see reduces pretty much to nothing but abstractions, well, there's one thing we do know, and that's our first person experience of the world. And so in that way, at least in a logical way, I sort of lean towards the idealistic explanation that there's something like a phenomenal sort of raw field of experience or something that's modulating with our human minds or the minds of any sentient sort of creature that may exist in this universe as it is. So that way, I don't have to abstract too much. I can build on what I know firsthand rather than an abstraction of material. And it seems to be less assumptions going into that as well. So, anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. And A's, you get the last word because I'm
Yes.
getting cold out here.
Okay, yeah. Let me. So I'll try to make it brief, but again, just probability works like this. This is kind of where I was going. I'm going to go in the same direction I was going to go the other day. Imagine a guy who has a large bag filled with marbles, 1,000,000 marbles, a huge bag with 1,000,000 marbles. There's one blue marble, and all the rest are red. Now, let's say you blindfolded this guy and said you have 1 minute or let's just say 10 seconds to sample as many marbles as you can. Let's say he'll get 3. He'll do like 5, one every 2 seconds. What are the chances he's going to get the blue marble? Not very
Small.
high, right?
No, the chances he's going to get the blue marble is small.
Exactly. And the reason for that is if he had enough time to sample all the marbles, he would eventually get the blue marble. But if you only give him 10 seconds to get in that he can get a max of 5 marbles, you would say he would fail. And essentially, evolution can be thought about like that. There's a certain, let's just say evolution is limited in time by, let's say, the age of the Earth. Within that time frame, there are a certain number of mutations that can be generated by reproduction and natural selection and all that. Now, it's going to be a very large number because of all the bacteria. But let's just say you need a certain number of mutations to get to where we are. And you are able to determine how many mutations could have possibly occurred in the history of Earth. I'm not going to give you the exact numbers, but basically what it comes down to is kind of like the guy with the bag of marbles. There isn't nearly enough time in Earth's history for enough mutations to have been created through reproduction to even come close to the amount necessary to generate modern biodiversity. So,
one thing I want to say,
okay,
and it's just to clarify that I think you'll agree with, even though it would be incredibly small chance that the person picked one marble and it happened to be correct, it happened to be the blue one. All right, there still is a chance, right? I mean, I'm a gambler. I gamble on sports all the time. All right, and the underdogs, even the extremely unlikely things, sometimes happen, right?
Right, and that's why I'm not going to claim this proves that God exists. But again, the question we're asking is, who's more confident? What are the probabilities and chances? And it's just something to think about. And
you gave me something to think about, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
because I like to keep the brain circulating.
Yeah,
right.
And look up the terms quantum tunneling and photosynthesis.
Okay.
Look that up. It kind of weighs on the probability argument, but yeah, just take a look at it when you have a chance. If you're interested, you may find it sort of interesting to kind of factor into your view right here.
Yeah, and I will say, Scott, I was understanding everything you were saying, and I think you and I have a lot of agreement with the idealism being. I guess it's idealism versus like physicalism, or
right. Yep.
And I think that the Bible anthropomorphizes a concept of God to an extent that humans. See, when they say God's coming down and talking to Adam and Eve, and like.
Mm-hmm.
Did God? Is there really a God who like came down from the sky and talked to these people? It's like, where were you? I looked for you all day. I couldn't. I think these are probably anthropomorphizations of a concept that's kind of so beyond our comprehension that it's like we're just gonna give them a little cartoon version of God to kind of get them going. and then people kind of take it literally and kill each other over it, which is sad. But I think that's kind of what's going on. But anyways, all right. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you guys, and I hope we all agree we don't want to kill each other over this.
Heck no.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Heck no.
Yeah. We can agree on that. We can leave on the
Definitely.
I can
Definitely.
agree with that. All right.
Appreciate
Thank you.
I'm gonna run and go inside. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right,
Bye.
man. Have a good one, Lou.
Thanks.